yeah, there's just a lot of camaraderie. I feel like it's a lot less of like who's winning, and it's a lot more of like how can we help each other win,
Yeah,
which is like
definitely.
it's just like a nice thing. Like everybody, it's like if you sell a thing to somebody, basically everybody wins because
Yeah,
when I
so I think in terms of this field, it's pretty unique within India. It's a very small group of people who are kind of working within this space. And I think it's been great because I think it's only last 4 years where it's really picked up. The idea was that it's kind of learning to be able to create that sequence. So what I did was like I had this table of these sequence of words, so like just basic two-letter words to three-letter words. This would allow me to kind of play around with the camera movement through my MIDI controller, and if I had audio as well, and these things would also be audio reactive to that. I think the origins of religion are there is a lot of truth in them. It's about the degradation over the years. It's about the degradation over the centuries, which has kind of because of just human nature, right? The way that we want to deal with things, with the way we understand it.
welcome to the Visual Cast. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem. The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we interview some of the most unique, interesting, high level, and exciting artists from all over the world. Entering into season 2, we will be starting a monthly live stream to our paid subscribers. To join in on the live stream with Q&As, polls, and some surprises, click on the join button below. Your subscription will massively support our channel and bring us further to creating a community of like-minded individuals who love, create, and immerse themselves with the visual arts and the visual world. For those unable to join financially, don't worry. The episode, like all of our episodes, will be available on Thursdays for everyone to watch. And if you want to support us, like and subscribe and share with anybody you think will enjoy the podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Now, without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Alrighty, welcome to the Visual Cast. Joined today by a very special guest, someone who I would consider a friend, someone who we, worked together in the past, and then didn't work together for a long time, and then got brought back up into my mind by one of the guests of the show, Plexus Play, who had mentioned to me that this guest had worked with him on one of his projects, and then I'm like, oh, I know that guy, he's awesome. And I'm super excited to be able to have him on the podcast and talk to him. Welcome to the podcast, Vinay Khare. I totally mispronounced your name, and you just told me
No
how to
worries.
say it. Vinay Khare. Vinay Khare.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Vinay Khare.
That's
Okay. Sorry about that.
all good. Not at all.
How
Thanks
are
for
you,
having
man?
me here.
Of course, man.
I'm
Of
good.
course.
I'm
I'm so
good.
happy that you're here. It's been, a lot of times it's hard to find the scheduling, different countries, different time
Yeah,
zones. People are busy, and then I get busy, and then it's always, whenever we, manage to get the time, it's always exciting, and I'm really happy that you're
yeah,
here.
yeah. I think it's
So,
been about 2 months, right, that we've been trying to figure this out.
at least, if not more. I'm a little bit more embarrassed to say actually how long it has been. Um, but we did manage to do it. Um,
Yeah,
so Vinay, I wanted to look at your work a little bit because it's been a while since we've been in touch, and we got in touch for you were helping me design and kind of program a project that I was working on for basically like for virtual production, some sort of server system, and you were graciously
right.
helping me to design and make some GLSL for there, and it was really successful actually what you made for me. That project went away, but what you developed for me I
Hmm.
still use today, so that's really awesome. And I kind of been looking at some of the work that you've been doing recently, and it's really awesome and impressive. And I just kind of wanted to start
Thank
off
you.
with like this kind of question of, you know, what is it like to kind of be in this cutting edge of new media and technology and immersive and interactive in a place like India, in a place where, there's so much things going on, there's so much opportunity, there's so much competition, there's so many people, but you're on the cutting edge of something and you're kind of touching on something that everybody wants, And yeah, just kind of
Yeah,
wanted to ask you about that. Like, what's it like, and how's it like being there and working in this field there?
yeah. I think it's only last 4 years where it's really picked up.
Mm,
And it was a bit difficult at the beginning to think that, okay, is this something that could actually have any opportunity within India? And that's like
mm,
been a big problem because um, in terms of, whether this is going to be commercially viable, is it going to be financially stable or not?
yeah,
That was an initial concern, but I think after COVID, there's been a boom of all of these kind of experiences and installations and performances. Getting to know a lot of more people within India who are doing this. That's been the best part of it, I think, because
yeah,
it's like, okay, you know that this field is so small, but then you know that there's so many people who are doing it in parallel, and then there's a lot of sharing and there's a lot of collaborations. There's a lot of
mm,
explorations together, and there's like a whole community across this huge country which is just tied through this one field, and this almost like a tying factor that brings everyone together
that's
and
awesome.
excites everyone, and that's kind of really been a great experience from that perspective.
That's so nice to hear. That's I really feel like that's one of the powers or like benefits or amazing things about Touch Designer and just in general like
Yeah,
the kind of the creative community around interactive and immersive art. So much sharing, like even though
yeah,
in some way you're competitors and there's some like this you're trying to get a job and he's trying to get a job and everybody's trying to like get a job, but there's also this like feeling of like camaraderie, where it's like
right,
we know
right.
how difficult it is to sell the client on something. We know how
Yeah,
difficult it
yeah,
is to get there. I knew how hard I pitched on that job and you got it. Good for you. Or like
right.
sometimes you get a job and you need help and you want to,
Yeah,
you're going to hire the people that you like to work with and that are smart. And, so it's like just such a nice community of people, especially like you
yeah,
said, in a place like, in a place like India where it's not so, like the industry is small, but there's a lot of
right,
demand for it, right? That's like the best time to be in the industry. High demand,
right.
not a lot of supply.
Yeah,
But it's just like, yeah, there's just a lot of camaraderie. I feel like it's a lot less of like who's winning, and it's a lot more of like how can we help each other win,
yeah,
which is like
definitely.
it's just like a nice thing. Like everybody, it's like if you sell a thing to somebody, basically everybody wins because now
Yeah, yeah,
like a prospective client is going to go to that installation that you did and be like, oh, I love this installation. Okay, maybe they're going to want to find out who made it. Maybe they'll go back to you. Maybe they'll hire you. But maybe they don't live in the same area. Maybe they don't afford it. Maybe whatever. But now they're going to remember, I want the same thing. Okay, who am I going to find to do it? Okay, this person or whatever. Um,
yeah,
and that's obviously like just about business is also like the whole aspect of inspiration, right? That's a lot
yeah,
of times why we do art, right? To make inspiration and create some sort of a change of some sort, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been loving seeing
And
your
it
progression, man. Sorry?
and I think also within the field, it's so vast that everybody kind of takes a certain their own path in it, and they kind of
Mm,
specialize in a certain thing,
yeah, that's
and that
true.
also brings a lot more variety to the field itself. That kind of, okay, we know that this person's kind of focusing on this stuff, and this person's kind of focusing on this stuff, and then when they're coming together and creating something, that becomes a lot bigger because there's a and there's also a specialization at the same time.
Totally, totally. And it's like some people are going to be better at something and some people are going to be better at another thing.
Yeah,
And like you said, yeah,
yeah,
it's like when you're not like when the competition is not about like who wins, but it's about how
yeah,
big can we go as an industry.
yeah, exactly.
That's very
Yeah,
healthy, I think. Definitely, it's not like, it's a little bit utopian, maybe a little bit hippie to think this way, but I feel like even in the big players in the game, like, here in the States and stuff like that, even with like the bigger studios, there is a camaraderie. I
yeah,
think that for them, like obviously, you know, if you're a multi-million-dollar studio, your bottom line is like, you hired like, 50, 60 people, maybe hundreds of people. There's a little bit of more importance about winning that one thing. But I think that even as you grow and get bigger in this field, this is beautiful too. Even as you grow and get bigger in this field, then it's like there's this idea of, okay, you know, that camaraderie, like almost like the bigger the studio, the more responsibility they have to do a good job, because it
Yeah,
makes the whole industry look good, not just themselves,
yeah, yeah,
and vice
definitely.
versa. It's like if I lose a job to Studio X, but Studio X does a bad job, it makes me look bad as well. So it's like everybody has this responsibility, not just for themselves, but almost for the industry. And that kind of makes it in a way that if Studio X wins the bid, maybe I'll find out, be like, hey, do you guys need any help with something? Hey, do you know,
Yeah, yeah,
or Studio X will come to me and be like, hey, we need help with this thing. So I
yeah.
think it's kind of like that at the studio head of the I don't, I don't know for sure. I've only peeked in to certain studios and seen behind the scenes a little bit, but it does feel like that a lot of the times. And some of my friends that do
Right.
run studios, there is like this kind of, there's a little bit of like a, sourness if somebody wins a bid and you don't, but there is some sort
Right.
of like, feeling of like camaraderie. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know how, this is kind of a strange topic to start off with, like business and stuff like that, but here we are. Um, yeah, I wanted to talk to you obviously about your, for me, it's always interesting to learn and understand about where people come from. And especially when, you're coming from a totally different continent, it's always fascinating and interesting. So, you grew up in India. Maybe can you give us a little bit about where you grew up, what it's like, and maybe how you got interested in, the visual arts? I know you kind of went to school for like creative coding and, more for science and like computer science, but maybe
Right.
tell us a little bit about your window into this world, or even how you got into,
Sure.
computer science.
Yeah. Okay. So it is a bit of a long story, but
Oh, we're here for a while.
I fair. So I grew up in a city called Pondicherry. It's a really small town within South India, and where this is kind of interesting is because there's a school here which has a more alternative way of learning, which is kind of focusing on, let's say, integral education, where it's not about education for an exam or a job, and that's not the focus,
Hmm.
but it's more about the learning and the joy of learning within that,
Interesting.
which kind of translates into a huge amount of freedom that you're given while you're studying. So this is actually from kindergarten all the way to college,
Oh,
and
it's like
in
the
that
whole.
process,
Wow, interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's the entire kind of spectrum, but from a certain age, you're given a huge amount of freedom to choose your own subjects, to choose which teachers you want to work with, to choose how much time you want to spend on those particular subjects.
Hmm.
So that gave me an idea. Okay, I know what I could do and what I want to do, and it gave me the infrastructure to be able to do that. And
Mm.
it's not academic necessarily. So when I was growing up, I was like super interested in electronics and robotics and physical computing, all of that kind of thing. And that's where what I thought I'd be probably doing at this point is robotics primarily, and
Hmm.
figuring out how to make things move, how to make electronics function, all of those bits of technology in that perspective.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but with this infrastructure also with from the school, what it gave me was the opportunity to kind of with a couple of friends organize an annual maker fair. So the idea was that, okay, we liked making projects, and can we share that same appreciation and that whole same process with the others,
Hmm.
and create like possibility for them to come in and have an idea and be able to actually manifest it or execute it easily.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I think with anything physical, anything that's kind of, the moment you have to make something, there are a lot of ideas, but the moment you need to get into actually making it, it becomes a lot harder because there's so many struggles, there's so many obstacles that you kind of get disheartened the moment you get to the first few steps.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
So we were like, can we facilitate that process? Because we found a huge amount of joy in being able to get through that struggle. It's not easy, but there's the amount of joy that you get from that whole, all that effort is huge.
For
So
sure.
can we bring that same joy, but without having to make it that difficult? So in the process of doing this, we kind of noticed that there was this sort of idea that so within the maker fair, the idea was that you can make anything, right? The idea is not limited to anything technology, anything artistic. It could be anything from cooking to just creating a poster to anything that you want to create that's some physical representation or manifestation.
Mm.
And then we kind of started seeing that, oh, the students who are coming in to participate are primarily those within the science or technology background,
Hmm.
not many from the arts, like very few
Nerd
from the arts.
alert.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody's like electronics, programming, Arduino. That's when all of these things were really picking up, and like, okay, let's
Mm.
get into all of that stuff because that's new and cool in that sense. But we kind of noticed that, okay, the artistic students, the performances, all of those things were kind of being not brought in.
Mm.
Um, and because I was kind of part of organizing this thing and trying to facilitate all of this, I was like, perhaps I need, and I was on the other extreme as well, saying that I'm going to be only tech. I don't have any creative output. I have nothing to do in the artistic space.
Interesting.
So I was like, okay, let me as a challenge take this up to explore where that intersection can actually happen. And that's probably how I got into this space of media arts. It was as an exploration for
Interesting.
myself and for the others to see that, okay, there is an overlap between the two. There is a way that you can do creative stuff using technology.
Hmm.
So
I love
I
that.
think that, yeah, that kind of stuff was the experimentation, and that's kind of been the last 10 years from more actually, about 12 years of just experimentation. And that's pretty much all I'm doing still, I think, for me at this point. It's just
Amazing.
experimenting how this overlap works.
Yeah, there's such a big overlap, right? I mean, like I think a big part of what I love about this podcast, or I love this podcast, but what I love about doing this podcast, the people that I get to meet, there's so many variety in terms of what people are interested and excited about. But there's so much
Yeah,
overlap. So even if that thing is like, I love making apps, or I love making, plugins, or super like on that side of the,
right.
not making like just making tools for people to create with, versus like people that are just like, I'm just making art. I don't even think about the tool. I don't even, I'm just making the thing. With the conversations that I have with them, I realize and I unlock these similarities between the two kind of like passions. And something that I always talk about, and like I've talked about a few times on the show, is that for me, it was like a very big kind of change in my perspective of like what it means to be an artist when I started doing a lot more like technical stuff, when I started doing more systems design and engineering and coding and things, because I was still scratching that itch that I felt, of like creative
Right.
output and expression. It just was being done in a different place. And you're immersing yourself in this kind of like creative place where you can make beautiful things, but also you can program those beautiful things.
Right.
Connecting the intersection of these are when you started with robotics and Arduino and electronics,
Right.
and how do you make it beautiful and interesting and
Yeah.
immersive and interactive. um, there's a lot of overlap there. did you
Yeah.
did you
Yeah.
notice it at first, or was it like gradual? Did it take time to see that?
So the one thing I missed out to mention earlier was that because the school actually has, as I said, beyond academics, it's a variety of things. So as students, we're already exposed to multiple disciplines from an early age. So that's basically from
Amazing.
carpentry to pottery to theater to dance to acting to there's so much. There's so much.
It's amazing.
I'm forgetting at this point. But um, what I wanted to kind of mention was that there is a foundation of all of these things that is already there. That that all these disciplines exist, And because you're kind of growing up in it, you already kind of see an overlap that's
Within,
happening within your,
wow.
yeah, because you can kind of see that, okay, within my academic stuff, like with maths and science, I can see that, okay, I can bring some electronics in, I can bring in some carpentry, I can bring in some of the other stuff that I'm working, even metal work. How do I bring all of that stuff to make a project and to make an experiment and see that
Mm,
happening? This is just a very simple example, but that kind of connection, depending on how you're growing up and what your interests are, is something that's kind of inherently there because at a young age, it's about bridging those connections. It's
for
about having
sure.
that the variety and then being able to bridge those connections.
What is this form of education called? Is it called something, or is it just like is it based
So
on something?
so actually, there is an entire philosophy behind the education system and the community which I grew up in,
Hmm.
which I think we'll get to perhaps later after the set
Okay.
because that's kind of been I think in terms of like what the philosophy and all of that is because that is
Okay,
based
so
on
it's
Indian philo.
oh wow. Okay. Oh my God. I can't
So
wait. I can't
yeah,
wait. That's awesome. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was because it's like there's a lot of European like educational systems like Waldorf or
right,
what's
right.
the other guy anthroposophic. Maybe they're the same, but there's like all these different philosophies. So you're saying it's kind of like not just education, it's also like lifestyle and belief and all this kind
Yeah,
of stuff that's
yeah,
going. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Okay, I can't wait. I
And
can't wait. Okay, save it. We'll
so
save
that's
it for
been the
the
driving, yeah, that's the driving philosophy behind this education system, but it's kind of self-contained. It's kind of an independent thing. And this was, started off in the 1950s. So it's about like 70 years old. So way ahead of
wow.
its time for within India,
Really? Wow,
especially.
wow, wow.
So it's kind of been there for many years.
Right.
And I
And
think a lot of
developed and
these
evolved.
places, yeah, exactly. And a lot of places around India are now kind of opening up to these ideas as well.
Amazing. I mean,
So
it's
it's,
like,
yeah,
my kid's only 2, but you just see from even this early development like the necessity of like allowing them to do whatever they want, and I
yeah,
remember as a
yeah,
kid like growing up in such a rigid environment, religious and like orthodox dogma, like all these like do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Thankfully my parents, I think, were pretty open to like allow me to pursue like weird things like computers and art and stuff like that, but it was always like with like a little bit of like, oh, that's kind of weird, or okay, if you're
right.
doing that, then do that. Don't try a
Yeah,
million
yeah,
things now. It's like, which is kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
most Western society, I'm sure in Eastern society as well. Like it's kind of like,
yeah,
okay, this is what you're gonna do and do it and be good at it and that's it. And like really like the
yeah,
natural thing is like to try everything and and not
yeah,
even like to try everything. It's like what you just said. It's like, okay, now that I tried everything, I see how everything is connected to the same thing. And then
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
learn for yourself what it is that that thing is, right? Because it's so
yeah.
different for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of still driving me at this point and whatever, and probably is going to be driving me for the rest of the next couple of years in terms of what I want to do is not very clear. But I know
Yeah,
that what I'm doing what I like. That's what's important.
that is what is important. It's like that's definitely the biggest advice I think, I always give to people is like, once you find the passion thing, then just do it.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter
yeah,
what it is. If you're passionate, then you're going to create, first of all, happiness, right? Because you're going to be enjoying what
mm,
you do. But you're also going to be really good at that thing because you're so passionate about it.
yeah,
So you're going to be good at something and you're going to enjoy yourself while you're doing it.
yeah,
That's success. That's not,
yeah,
that's just
yeah,
what it is. Money and numbers, that's not success. Like success can
yeah,
come in the form of money and numbers, but it
yeah,
comes in like, are you happy with what you're doing and are you good at what you're doing? Like those are really, I
yeah,
think, the things. Really cool.
yeah,
Okay, so you
exactly.
didn't really so you didn't actually necessarily study like computer science per se. It was a much more open kind of thing.
Yeah, so computer science was one of the focuses
Electives.
during my college. It was
Mm-hmm.
an elective, but it kind of was amongst multiple other things like even
Interesting.
philosophy and
Cool.
even like in terms of ICT for social development. So a variety of things. But
Wow.
computer science and science was the mainstream, let's say, like the
Mm-hmm.
academically the mainstream. but then you had these surrounding and peripheral um, ideas and
Were
subjects as well.
you, as a kid, were you kind of interested in these type of things, or was it more just as you got older, you kind of went into a thing? Were you, are your parents into computer science? Like, is this kind of
Yeah.
inspired?
So, yeah, my dad's primarily into computers and technology, and my brother as well went into engineering.
Okay.
So it did seem like the natural way to go. Surprisingly, the funny bit is that my aunts are completely creative and artistic. So I
Oh
think I
wow.
hit the sweet spot in between the two, where there is the technology and then my
I
aunts.
love
So
it.
I can have conversations with both on two different things at the same time.
That's awesome. You won. You won. You figured it out.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, and then so getting into like the immersive and interactive, like getting into visual arts was almost like out of like a necessity, or almost like because this community was building and you kind of just wanted to
Yeah.
bridge these two communities together. Like,
Yeah. I think it was like for me to convince myself first that there is this space that as I said, I was like on the other side of saying that I'm going to be only tech, and I was
right.
excluding the arts and humanities for a long time because of that,
Mm,
and probably regret this at this point, but that's part of the journey.
of course.
That I was kind of, okay, I was like focusing on electronics and robotics at that point, but I was like, can I actually see if there's a space that becomes creative using technology? Because I already had that background and that foundation in that.
Amazing.
So yeah, I think, and then there were a couple of, because there was like a project-based learning approach in the school that made a huge difference because it's not just about theory, it's not just about, okay, we're thinking it's possible, but you actually manifest those and you actually create those projects which do um,
Uh-huh. Like you go
make that
into
happen.
action. Like you go into action.
Yeah, exactly. And
This
there
is
was
pretty
this
sick.
one project which really struck at that point, which is, I mean, this is a project I'd come across, which is like the V Motion project. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Sounds familiar.
So this is like a
V motion.
interactive performance thing, which was like it's like a 3-4 minute video, which was this guy who was using hands and his body to actually perform music with a whole projection thing as well.
Okay, okay,
Perhaps I
okay.
can just see.
Yeah, I'm trying to search
Uh,
for it. My not getting so much well. But yeah, just tell us about it. We don't have to watch it necessarily, but tell us about it. So is
yeah,
that something that you saw and were inspired by?
yeah. So I saw this when I was about 16 or so, and I was like, I want to create something like this, and that's
Mm,
exactly what I'm going to go for. But
cool.
of course, we didn't have the budget or the means to do it. So we found like a very hacky version of it. So the idea was to kind of use the hands to perform music. So you would do this, and a note would play or a loop would play. You would be able to control auto filters with your hand. So the first iteration of this was like we made a ring with like these light sensors on them, and then we just had a projection on it. And when the person in front would just uh, block the light from the projector onto that sensor,
Uh-huh.
and that would trigger the
Got it.
sound. So
Wow, interesting.
that was like a
That is
very
a very,
stupid and cheap version of it, but yeah,
but I'm sure it was effective, no? Like it must have been
yeah,
effective
yeah,
because it's these
exactly, exactly,
light blockers are so accurate, right? It's like literally just like a
yeah,
shadow. That's cool.
yeah, exactly. So we had like 12 of these sensors, and then whenever you blocked a particular sensor with your hand, it would trigger a sound or a loop, and
That's cool.
exploring projection mapping along with that. And we did like a small 10-minute performance with that.
Wow. Was that one of the first ones that you did?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that was the first project probably within the space of creative
Amazing.
technology.
Amazing. And so I guess this gets us into the big question of, the was that the first time that you used Touch Designer, or was Touch Designer not in the
No,
picture yet? No. Okay.
not
Okay.
not yet, not yet.
Okay. 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 So tell me a little bit
This was
about
still,
how you got into it. Yeah.
yeah. So that was the first project that I did, but in parallel, I was also doing another projection mapping project for like we at the end of our school year, we had like a performance that we would put up the entire class. So for that, I thought, okay, instead of doing like a ending with a traditional song or coming together, why not do like a, projection mapping on like cardboard boxes of all the classmates, kind of just doing some random green screen effects, like silhouette effects,
That's
and
that's
pretty
so cute.
much
I love
just
it.
did that. And I was like rendering 2 minutes before the showing. So I was just making sure everything's kind of working out. And then that was like the first project within the projection mapping space of just putting things together and boxes, those first projects that you do in projection mapping. Um, and then surprisingly, a few months later, there was someone from the US who had come to to Pondicherry, and he was actually one of the people who used to do like like the technical stuff for Super Bowls. So he was like
Wow.
looking into the production and the whole server side of things.
Hmm.
And it just happened to be that we kind of met and we were showing him this work, and he was like, "Oh, you know what you should be working with is TouchDesigner. That's going to be the
Oh, no
future of
way.
this."
I can't
Yeah.
believe that's crazy.
And
Like just a
this was
random
in
American guy
2014.
coming. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
wild. That's wild.
Yeah. So this was like in 2014, and I was like just learning about these things. I was like, okay, this is something that's going to be interesting, but let's see when it comes. And but definitely kind of piqued my interest because okay, like this is something I want to get into, and someone coming from this industry and kind of talking about like from that entire
Like a
scale of things.
professional,
And
like a
yeah,
professional saying,
exactly.
"Hey, try this out," right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of really opened the door at that point. And then I think the first project that I worked with Touch Designer with it was actually like a multimedia projection dance performance,
nice.
which was trying to use the Kinect to track people and then have particle systems that would kind
Right.
of bounce off them,
I love it.
and then create these depth tracking kind of effects with silhouettes, and as they move, create a there was another project which I'd seen, which I was like trying to replicate. So I think my growth has been looking at projects and being able to replicate them for myself,
Nice.
through the
It's a good
technology
way to
that I had
learn.
available.
It's a good way to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah, yeah.
For sure, for sure.
So
Yeah.
that was the first time I did it, and it was super low FPS because I just did not know how to optimize things. And it was at this point, if I look at it, it's pretty basic, but it was good. It was good. It was fun. It was definitely a lot of learning because like the first time that you're getting into it. And I think the best part of it all is because there were only a few tutorials or a few set of things available 10 years ago. Like
Right.
there's like only a handful of information and documentation available to really learn
Right.
Touch Designer at that point.
Right.
And but it was focused on the foundations of it. That's the thing,
Yeah.
right?
It
It's
was like the
not,
best time to learn it because it was like the
yeah,
basics of the basics. Like if you could
yeah,
figure it out
exactly.
10 years ago, there was just enough information that like, Matthew Reagan and the
Yeah,
documentation of it's the thing itself. Paqueta was also
yeah,
kind of just starting, not exactly 10 years
right,
ago, but just
right.
start. And like you get these small little basics and then it's like, okay,
Yeah,
now you need the experience and time to like know what you're doing. But you're right, like the
yeah,
foundations were really like important back then, right? Like if you could get those
yeah,
foundations,
yeah.
you had a really good base for sure.
There was also like Albert's Envoy, the book, the Touch
That's
Designer workbook.
wow. That's
So that was like a super
shout
helpful
out, shout
thing,
out.
yeah, because
It's
that's
even
so
before
structured
his
and
movie.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's like what I started off learning with at that point, and just putting things together, experimenting and playing around at that point. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. It must have been like showing all your classmates or like maybe like this point or like maybe past school, but showing your classmates Touch Designer, people must have been like, oh my god, what the hell is this, like this is the
Yeah.
bridge that you were talking about the whole time. Look, this is data. Look,
Right,
this
right,
is
right.
technology. This is chops. This is that. And then, oh, look, it all comes together as texture. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. So this was first year of college, like the
mm,
first year of college, and then again, in the third year, we kind of revisited the V-Motion project with the hand movement, but now this time we had a Connect. So like,
Okay, nice.
can we use that for a performance?
Right.
We don't need to use basic electronics and Arduinos for it now. We have this camera system and a hand tracking system, skeletal tracking. We got hands on a leap motion as well at that point.
Nice.
So it is my friend and I, we kind of put up like a 45-minute audiovisual performance. Again,
Cool.
the idea was to explore new ways to perform music and kind of work with the visual content as well. So, working with dance was one part of it, then kind of working in music. So again, the experiments were within different disciplines. It's not just the arts, but within arts, what are the different disciplines and how technology can be used for each discipline in that sense.
Interesting. What an interesting exploration while you're starting out. It, did it ever was it ever like overwhelming, like the amount of options and like directions that you could go with everything?
I think it was overwhelming, but we were definitely constrained by the information and knowledge and the technology, I think. So I think that was a creative constraint saying that, okay, this is all that we have. What can we do with it? Right. That's what the thing was like pull together everything that you have and then just create something out of that. Um,
Right.
so there is this idea within Indian methodology of creating things called jugaad. I don't know if you've heard of it
Jugard?
before.
No, I haven't. Jugard,
Yeah,
okay.
it's like just the most hacky way to make something work, as long as it works. It
As
doesn't
long as it
matter
works.
how it's done. Yeah, as long as it works, and it doesn't matter how you got to it. As long as it works, it works.
I didn't know there was a word for it, but I definitely know that that's an Indian thing for sure.
Yeah, for
Jugad. Okay, I
sure.
have to know this.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, before we were talking about my time in Goa a little bit, and
right.
there was this one moment that was like the most like perfect Indian moment, I think, from my small amount of knowing India. But there was like rain at a party. I was doing projections at a party, and it was rain,
Oh, nice.
and one of the projectors just like went out. Like that's kind of
Oh,
like a
shoot.
normal thing. Like projector goes out.
Yeah, yeah.
And literally, like, the projector goes out. First of all, everybody starts yelling at me, and I'm just DJing. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Like, I didn't set up anything, and so I'm like, it had nothing to do with me. And then like they come, and then like I look to the left of me, and there's literally like 10 or 15 people like digging in a digging a hole and pulling out the
Okay.
grounding, like when you
Oh,
ground electricity, you have to ground it like
right, 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 right,
the ground. So it's like 10 or
right.
15 people just like all just digging in this mud and pulling out the grounding thing. And it was like I was like, okay, is this like safe where I am right now? Like they pulled out the grounding, this water everywhere, and it was like a little
Right.
bit of a moment of like fear. And then I don't know, like there was just like this very like even though it was all very chaotic, everything was kind
Right,
of like organized. It's kind of like when
right,
you
right, right, right.
drive whenever I was driving around with a motorcycle, it's like the most chaotic road ever, but somehow everybody's totally fine. Nobody's getting into accidents. People are swerving around cows, and you're driving, and there's like no really
Right,
like
right.
laws of how to drive, but everybody's fine. Nobody's getting into accidents. It's like
Yeah,
this, crazy
there's order in the
energy.
chaos.
There's order in the chaos. And I just remember like looking over, and there's like 15 guys pulled the projector down, brought a new projector, and it was like so many people doing this like very simple thing, but it was effective. It was effective, like very
Yeah,
fast. They got a
yeah.
new projector, they grounded the electricity, and everything happened very fast. And I was like, oh, this is like an Indian
Yeah.
thing, like everybody's working
We'll
together.
get
It's like
things
this one
done.
thing. We'll get things done. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's definitely like a vibe. It's definitely a vibe that you kind of
Yeah,
have to. I guess once you, I mean, I guess when you live with it, it's probably like almost like second nature in some way.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, um, it's interesting. Does that ever like Well, I guess there's a word for it. So like, is it something that you kind of grow out of, or is it something that just kind of always guides you in a way, or like ushers you? It's like a cultural thing, right? Like, cultures have different ways of doing things, and sometimes they
Yeah,
guide you in a
yeah.
certain direction, and sometimes you're like, okay, I know how to work within that system, but I'm gonna do my own thing, or I'm gonna change a little bit, or
Yeah. Um, funny story. I think it's going to be there for the entire life because there was this one project I was working on a couple of years back, and this was like a LED pillar, like a cylinder.
mm-hmm.
And for this, I needed like a huge, very powerful system, like a 4080 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like five LED screens and creating a generative content with TouchDesigner on it.
Uh-huh.
And I told them, okay, get this spec, all of these things. I gave them this, the details of it, and they bought a computer for that particular event. And I get on site, and I'm like, okay, let me get started on it. And I realized I just brought the PC and forgot to bring a monitor. So
Oh no, that's happened to me so many times. I know that
I was
feeling.
like,
It's the
do I
worst.
need to be so specific that I need to tell you to bring the monitor as well with the PC?
Oh no.
So I was like, okay, how do I do this? And it was like one day before the event, and we need to get things up and running.
Yeah.
So there was this LED pillar, which is almost 10 feet in diameter, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
that was my screen. So my touch designer workflow was kind of just wrapped around this pillar. And this is like almost 25 meters away from the PC where the server room is. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, a Bluetooth mouse, a Bluetooth keyboard will not be working at this point at this range. How do I get myself to actually control the system from seeing the pillar being 25
Oh,
meters away from the PC?
oh no.
And I was like, okay, let's figure this out. I was like, okay, let's try TeamViewer. So, and I didn't have my laptop, I had only my phone. So I was literally in front of this pillar, which is like 10 feet in diameter, and controlling the keyboard and the mouse through my phone on TeamViewer, looking at that. If I wanted to go and see something in the middle of the screen, I have to go around this pillar to the other side and see what node that's there.
Oh my
So I would
God.
say that's what's Jugaad for me at this point, figuring out how to deal with situations on site.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good skill though to be able to do that, you know,
Yeah,
especially in our world, in like the visuals world, VJing, you know, in immersive interactive, like setting up it's like because it's like you never know what's gonna be,
what's
you
gonna go
never
wrong?
know who's gonna what project, you know, you never know what's gonna go wrong, and it's like the more you're flexible, obviously with like
Yeah,
boundaries, right? Because like you can't just be a pushover, you can't just be like, you know, you have to like also like tell people like, hey, bring a monitor, you know, like that's
yeah,
important.
yeah, yeah,
But you know, but there's always so many things, and it's like if you can problem solve on a level that's not just like, you know, you're not just smart, you're not just like able to smartly
right.
solve problems, you're also like Jagardi. What Jagardi, is that Jagardi?
Yeah, yeah, Jugaad.
You're
Yeah,
also Jagarding
we
it,
are of it.
you know.
Yeah,
Then it's like you're winning because it's really like almost like,
yeah,
you know, you're also impressing whoever's hiring you because you're solving their problem, and also for yourself, you're
right.
not like sitting in a corner like, you know, you're just like
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's a big skill, and I think in our world, because very often, unless you start at the top, you're gonna start, you know, from the more, I don't know what the right word is, but like, you know, the more amateur experiences or gigs,
right,
right? And
right.
in those places, people don't know what they're doing most of the time. You don't
Yeah,
even know what you're doing, right? So it's like
yeah, and
if you can
budgets are
roll with the
super low.
punches, budgets are super low. If you can roll with the punches, then you're gonna make something good. You're gonna have a good
Yeah,
result.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I love it.
definitely.
I love that. It's such a good thing to be able to learn, and it's also, you know, I think that I think I don't want to put too much on you, but I think that as you grow even more further, I think maybe you'll see that that can just be something that exists, and you don't have to necessarily be part of it. I don't
Yeah,
know. Maybe not. Maybe not. But
yeah.
maybe yes.
I think that there's a fun story to it after all, right? Like when you reflect on this thing and like, okay,
Totally.
that's a fun incident that happened,
Right.
and you figured
I
your way
figured
out.
that out. Yeah,
Yeah,
you figured your way out for
yeah.
sure. It's like a
Definitely not the ideal situation, but next time I'm going to make sure that I mention a monitor in the tech writer as well now.
yeah.
But but
As long
yeah,
as you, it's like learning, you know, trial by fire. You know this saying. You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like if you you know, if you burn yourself, you probably are not going to
yeah,
burn yourself again. You're going to know not to do it
yeah,
again, you know?
definitely,
Um,
yeah.
It's just I in my life, I wish there is so many moments in my life where I'm like, okay, I wish I could have learned that thing without deleting all my files or not saving the thing or whatever it was, whatever the thing
Yeah,
is, I'm
yeah,
never gonna do it again. I wish I didn't have to go through that pain. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but when you do, you won't do it again. So that's also like
yeah,
a good thing, right?
definitely. Yeah, I think
Um,
that's something important for me to kind of always experiment and actually fail more times because then you're going to
mhm,
actually figure out how to do it better next time. If you kind of
totally.
just smooth sail, there's like you're going to be a little just there. The moment you kind of really hit failure and that pain, you're going to be like,
Totally.
okay, next time I need to do it much better. I can't be doing
Totally.
this.
Totally. And also if you have an opportunity to experiment and fail in a safe
Yeah,
environment, or like fail
yeah,
on like when the stakes are low, right? Like it's not like
yeah, yeah,
this big
definitely.
corporate client. It's a little amateur thing, or it's a small thing, or it's personal, or
Yeah,
maybe it's a big job but there's not like a lot of stakes. Then you're failing, so you're learning and you're growing,
yeah,
but the
yeah,
the result's still good and the client's still happy or the job still happens. So it's like, it's not the end of the world, right? Like if
yeah,
you
of
like you
course.
said, if you just cruise the whole time and then you get this big job and that's where you fail, then you're in a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, that's where,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
amazing. Um, okay, so I guess you kind of almost like you're learning touch designer, you're in school, you're finishing school, and you've kind of have a few projects under your belt, right, from school. You figured out how to do things. How did you get your first paid job? Where did you like put your foot into the door in immersive and interactive space? Tell us a little bit about like where you like leading into where you are now, a little bit before where you are
Right.
now.
Yeah. Um, so I think like with the projects that I've done, we're still very basic and kind of just understanding the system and how things were kind of working with Touch Designer. And I think there was like a 2 year break, not a break, but like not very actively working with Touch Designer on projects there and within this field. This was during my master's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back to India after that and just doing a couple of things here and there. And then I started a job as a creative technologist, but that was more within the space of physical computing and interaction, but with electronics and how to create these interfaces for experience centers. Um, 3 months within that, COVID kind of happened, and there
Mm-hmm.
was this whole almost 1.5 years of lockdown where all physical, all interactive things were completely stalled. The funny thing is that like 2 days before the lockdown, I decided to kind of start a daily, which was
Oh,
just to
really?
kind of create something on a daily basis for with Touch Designer and just
Huh.
post it on Instagram.
Oh, I
Um,
didn't know that.
so this was like I didn't know there was going to be a lockdown. It's not anticipated. I just like literally 2 days before the whole thing just happened, I decided to do it because the idea was to kind of one is get my hands a bit more dirty with the scenario and dive into it further. But at the same time also give up this perfectionist idea that okay we have to always create something nice and
Wow.
just creating something or the other and just putting it out
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely failed because now with COVID I had a lot more time, which meant that I spent almost like 4 to 10 hours every day during lockdown
Making a
on
daily.
this. Yeah, which
I
is
love it.
much more time than I should have been spending on it.
Right.
But it was fun. It was great
That's
fun.
hysterical.
Um, yeah, but so definitely the perfectionist didn't get out, but I did improve my skill set and my kind of understanding of touch designer. And
Mm.
with the great thing with like something like daily is that you're getting into the flow the moment you get back into working in that space in the software.
Mm.
You kind of automatically tune in, and it's just you're so used to that process that you're moving forward from what you were doing before. Um,
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
and there were days which were terrible, which were like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. It's just too much. And those were the like cheat days where I would just rework old work, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it was like I spent about 3 months, 99 days doing a daily, and then I said, okay, that's enough for me now. But I was kind of okay, now I'm comfortable. If I have an idea, I'm being able to kind of translate it easily within TouchDesigner. At the same time, I was also exploring sound design, and there was a lot more creative and artistic exploration by the end of this whole thing, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I didn't know you did
so,
dailies. I mean, 100 days is a lot. That's like a very impressive amount of times. You know.
yeah, not as much as what others are doing, but
No,
I
but
mean,
okay, that's sure. But it's also like
yeah,
the consistency is, I think, what's important.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
3 months consistency is really important. I'm looking through it now. Like some of the stuff is really nice. Like yeah, I
yeah.
could see
Like,
some of this. Sometimes you kind of like took an older thing or a tutorial or
yeah, and just
something, but
reworked it.
but
Yeah,
I mean, the
uh,
consistency is what matters, and what you said is so valuable, right? Like that after those 100 days, when you just were sitting at it and doing it, you managed to be actually like good at TouchDesigner and able to make things that you wanted to do, which
yeah,
is
exactly.
very valuable.
And I think as hard it was to get into the habit of doing the daily, it was as hard to get out of it as well. Because
Really.
yeah, because for the 5 days after that, I was like, okay, I need to do something. I have so much more time in my hand. And I used to just get back into actually creating something or the other. I think I posted only one day of it, but it was actually as hard to get out of it as it was to get into it, I would say,
That's so
which was
interesting.
kind of surprising. Yeah.
That's that's very
uh,
interesting.
So I think at that point I was like, okay, a little more comfortable. And this was, I think, more focusing on the visual side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier it was visual, but it was more system. It was more developing with with cameras, with interactive stuff, interfacing with Ableton, with projectors, more hardware oriented. But this was purely visual content. There was nothing beyond that, apart from a couple
Mm-hmm.
of interactive things with like a phone or something. But that was very sparse. Um, Kind of following that, in 2021, this is when my friend and I, who I've been collaborating with since college, we kind of thought, okay, let's. So he focuses on music and sound design, and I kind of was focusing on the visual and interactive bits. We said, um, why don't we kind of put up a pop-up show of like
Mm-hmm.
interactive experiences? Because one, nobody, whenever I speak to someone of what I'm doing in India, it's like a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation because I have to show them videos, I have to show them images, I have to show them, okay, this is how things work. Because I can't tell them I'm a creative technologist, and they're like, what do you do? Like,
What
what
is
is it
that?
that you do?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because I mean, I think even at that time within the world, it's still a fairly new concept. But after COVID, I think it's picked up a lot more around globally because of,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram and social media, all of these things. But I was like, okay, I need to reduce the time about how I spend communicating this. So why not actually put up an experience for people to kind of just come in, see how it is, and also see how people respond to it actually. So this was like early 21.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, yeah, early 2021, and we kind of just did this like a 3-day weekend evening exhibit of about three or four interactive installations, which is
Mm-hmm.
completely free for the public to come in, and then we
Wow.
would interact with them to also see what they would respond to, understand what was
Mm-hmm.
their. It was for us. It was like learning the audience at that point. It's like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
do they even kind of connect to this? Is this something that's even viable as a thing that people would connect to or respond to? Because there was no, at least at that point, there was no data for me to look at and say that, okay, there is an audience for these kind of things here.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was to kind of see if people responded to it, and we got a surprisingly good response. We had like, because it was COVID, we had organized it as 15-minute slots that people would come in 15 minutes and then move out. But people were there for about an hour, and people came back every day also, especially because of the kids. They were like completely fascinated. Excuse
Yeah, the kids love it, huh? They love it.
me. Yeah. So that kind of made me confident that there is definitely a scope to explore this even further within Pondicherry as well within India, and kind of dive into it further. And that also kind of became a portfolio project then, because
Mhm.
one is this is the first time that had a public audience kind of interacting with these experiences. It was like three different types of interactive experiences, from sound to visual to lights as well.
Mhm.
So that gave an initial range of projects that I could work on. And I think this was, and then in 22, let's say November, December was like the first commercial project that was there. Um, so there's this festival called Magnetic Fields Festival that happens in Rajasthan, which
Mhm.
is like a 3-day festival of camping in the desert. And then there's like it's in a small town in Rajasthan, and you're camping in the desert, and there's this palace which turns into a music festival for the entire 3 days. Um, and for that, Budweiser wanted to create like an interactive projection room. So that was the first project where we had like a um, wall projection and a floor projection, and then with the Connect, you could track the audience, and their movements would respond visually to create like 5 different themes. So all of this was super abstract. There was some amount of there's quite a bit of freedom in terms of what would be created. So
Mhm.
that was nice to see that like Budweiser didn't really have that much of a restriction in terms of what was created. They had one theme that they wanted that would be the kind of their logo or their brand, but the rest of the themes were completely creative and artistic. So that was nice to have. And I think
That's awesome.
from there it's just been one project after the other, and word of mouth, getting to know people, networking, all of those kind of things.
So it
Long
seems
answer,
almost
sorry.
no, 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 not at all. This is, this is the long answer show. So it seems like that festival, what was it called? Sorry, in Rajasthan, the
The
event,
Magnetic Fields Festival.
Magnetic Fields Festival. It seems like that was almost like a very, almost like a big turning point, right? Like where it was like
Yeah,
more, not global, but more national stage of like,
yeah, yeah,
higher end developers and people doing stuff, and
yeah,
you're kind of like getting your a foot in the door. It's amazing how those type of events, like those community driven, or even not community driven, but just like where there is a big community of people
right.
gathering together. Yeah, the network opportunities, and like if you can like
Yeah,
almost impress a few people in that space, that's all you need in a way, right? Because it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
then
yeah,
then you have one client that becomes two, that becomes three, and it's like, yeah. I mean, I have similar stories where, I go to a conference and it changes my life. I wasn't, you kind
yeah,
of don't really expect it to, in a way, like even though you're kind of
yeah,
going
yeah,
there for that reason, right? You're going to the conference to meet people, but then it does change your life. You're like, oh, I guess I wasn't really expecting that so much. Um,
yeah, definitely.
and it's timing as well, right? Like, COVID, pre-COVID, all these things
Yeah,
shifted so strongly during COVID. I think that
yeah.
there was such a big pull for all these things.
Yeah, I think there was a huge explosion after COVID because one, I think everybody wanted to get back into the physical space and like kind of
Yep,
do these things, and there was a big push towards that.
yep,
Plus, because of like a lot of free time and social media, a lot more exposure at the same time to see that, okay, these are the
yes,
kind of things that are actually happening. This is what's interesting. These are the kind of projects that you would see around the world, and then can we bring those here?
Totally.
So I think all of those things just kind of align and just happen to happen then.
Love it. Well, I mean, it's super fascinating to see, where you came from and where you're going. Before we jump into your set, I would like to talk
Yeah,
just quickly, or not quickly, please feel free to talk about it as long as you want, about your kind of collective. You were kind of telling me that it's like somewhat of a partnership, collective,
yeah,
collaborative studio.
right. Ayahi, yeah,
Ayahi.
Ayahi, yeah,
Ayahi, which is a studio. Yeah, please tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll jump into your set.
sure. Yeah. So I think that's a good segue to the set as well because
Perfect.
so my friend Risenjay, we've been collaborating since school, working on these kind
Nice.
of multimedia projects. As I mentioned earlier, he is kind of focusing on the music and sound design and audio side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of work towards the visual, interactive, and technology bits of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the because we've been working for so long, we know that we wanted to kind of focus within this space um, within India. We thought, okay, let's kind of put together a studio or a collective which is looking at um, interactive, immersive, audiovisual experiences within the Indian subcontext. So if that means that working with Indian traditional art? Is it working? And what does like new media art mean for within India? Because a lot of these things have come from the West, and that's where it's all started in that sense. But what does it mean to have all of these things within India? That was like our premise to explore um, and experiment within. So that would also mean like what is the kind of audience and what is the kind of subject matter that we could explore here that would resonate and would connect to people here.
Mm-hmm.
So Somni, which was the exhibit I talked to you about earlier, which was like the interactive thing was completely open to public, was the first project within that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the idea was to kind of understand how people respond to interactive and installations and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a bit of a break because he was studying in Boston at the Boston Conservatory for about 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only been a few, like about half a year since he's back, and then we've been picking things up. But the idea is that while it is primarily the two of us leading this, the idea is to kind of depending on the projects to expand that with other collaborators. And that's why it's more of a collective under which it's an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Where, like, even for Somni, which was not just the two of us, it was a huge team that actually had to come together to put this up. From like the scenography to the electronics to the programming, the
Mm-hmm.
management,
Mm-hmm.
all of those kind of
Mm-hmm.
things, right? So it wasn't just the two of us; it was like about a team of eight, nine of us,
Mm-hmm.
actually putting this up together. So in that sense, we're considering it more a collective of people who are
Right.
working towards this idea. Um, so that's been actually the last half year has been kind of focusing on rebuilding that since we had like a 3, 4 year break now, rebuilding that and seeing where this goes. And the primary focus at this point is audiovisual experiences and performances.
Mm-hmm.
And we, in fact, just had a show in April, and that's probably what my set's going to be. The second part of the set is going to be exploring what that audiovisual experience and performance was kind of looking into.
All right. So yeah, we're ready to see what you got ready for us, and looking forward to it. Take it away.
So before we get into the set, I just wanted to kind of talk about the overarching idea behind this. So as I mentioned, that we've kind of been exploring more audiovisual performances, but kind of focusing on narrative driven or a conceptual perspective. And the theme that we kind of chose this time was to explore artificial intelligence and how we understand intelligence and what where is that coming from? What is it beyond just the usage of it? How is that being kind of translated into a narrative of um, consciousness, and how do we perceive intelligence? These are the kind of questions that we were asking ourselves, and then this entire performance came together as a result of that exploration. Um,
Interesting.
the AV show is called Hyperreal, to kind of represent the abstraction of human intelligence that we're doing into artificial intelligence, and that is artificial intelligence really real intelligence, or is it just an abstraction or
Mm.
a layer of human intelligence that we just think is intelligent or conscious?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was just to kind of set the context of it. Um, the thing is that my work for the last 3 4 years has been primarily into interactive installations and system building for those things. Audiovisual performances has been something I've been doing, let's say 3 or 4 of them, but nothing too big. So perhaps my setup and all of this thing might be like not the most efficient thing, but it works for me. So I think I just wanted to share how that process is and how I set up
Awesome.
the performing it.
Awesome.
So just to kind of give an idea, we had a setup which had like a scrim projection in front, and one second, let me just bring the audio out. So we had this screen projection in front, and we had a screen behind as well.
Mm.
That was Mrityunjay who was working on the sound, and that was me on the visual side of things. So what we kind of had were different chapters, and exploring different themes, from the birth of a AI model to the world of circuitry, the world of electronics, which is the basis of all of these things, that intelligence actually lives within electronics, right? Because all in knowledge and all these things are based in electronics. That's the matter of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so that was this section, and then there was another section of bits and data, which was like how we perceive information as within the world of technology and
Wow.
artificial intelligence. So there was this other section of just how it's just zeros and ones. It's just a combination, a sequence of zeros and ones. Um, the next section was like learning, which was about how we look at images and how artificial intelligence deconstructs images into layers and feature
Wow.
maps, bringing all of these the
That is
neural
a really
networks.
nice visualization. That's really nice, dude.
Thanks,
I love that. Is
thanks.
that real time?
So yeah, all of it was real
That's
time.
awesome, dude. That's really, really nice.
So
I just love the
it makes a lot
visualization.
more.
It's great.
Thanks. A lot of it makes more sense with the sound of it, but we'll get to
For
it
sure.
later. Um, so that was like learning about how we are looking at images and how we extract features through images through AI, and then even like looking at segmentations and
Mm-hmm.
picking out points and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The last bit was kind of looking at language and communication, starting from pictographs and how we talk about images as hieroglyphs as the way to communicate first, and then the words come in, and then sentences, and how intelligence kind of comes out with the ability to actually speak and communicate as well, right? Intelligence is something that we perceive through communication.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this was just like the overarching theme of it all. Um, to kind of get
Nice.
this to your question, all of it real time, had to kind of make a setup which looked like this.
Nice.
So basically, the first line. So because all of these are the different sections here on the side here, and each section would kind of really max out the system at that point, almost, let's say, depending on
Mm-hmm.
different sections. So I could not
Mm-hmm.
run them in parallel. So what I was doing was like I have a way to kind of disable, enable these. So you can see as I'm, bringing those things, though, that gets enabled, and then allows me to kind of switch between different sections. So it activates those particular bases and that entire visual side of things. And then I had a preview window. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, thank God this was not the performance. Otherwise, this would have been a disaster. Uh, my PC just crashed because of my MIDI controller just got disconnected for some reason. Um, well, yeah. So what I was mentioning earlier was that this would allow me to kind of preview the sections. So, for example, here, and then I had a master fader for bringing it up into the final script and the screen view. So because there are two different projector screen surfaces, I had two different views for that. Um, so, and because the thing is that it was not overlapping any of the sections, there was a bit of a gap between. This allowed me to kind of bring one down, have a little bit of 30-second gap to bring the other one in, and then bring that back.
Nice.
And then we had like this was to bring it into the screen itself, like which would actually go here. So there was a preview, and then this was like the switch to which I can kind of show. So this was like the main screen, these two, the screen and the scrim. And then this was the preview space. So these switches were being controlled by these bits, and then these buttons would actually activate or disable or enable particular
Content.
bases. Yeah. What I wanted to kind of also share was that so for each section, I would have like the specific parameters set up here. And I would have like these parameters, and then like T1, T2, T3 are like the references to the MIDI keyboard. So I know that this is toggle one, toggle two, toggle three, or these would be like the sliders, the
Oh,
momentary
smart.
ones,
So you name them in the
A1.
parameter, like what the actual slider is.
Yeah,
That's smart. I like that.
yeah. Because I know my slider and I know like each one has like there's an A, B, C, S, and then T and M, which is like momentary toggle for the switches. Perhaps I can just it's this is
Oh,
the
sorry. You should bring your camera back in. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, this was
that's
the
good.
controller. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one second. Yeah, how's this?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the controller. So like I knew that this is my A, B, and C, and then this is my S, and then these are my toggle and momentary respectively, and that would be across the eight of them. So one second. Yeah, sorry. So this would kind of pop up depending on which section I would be in, and accordingly, I would be able to control it. And if I forget which parameter is doing what, I always just have that available visually to play around with and
Nice.
see.
Super useful.
Um, yeah, I mean, either that because the thing is that I'm using same faders and same sliders for different things for different
Scenes.
sections.
Yeah.
If it was, yeah, if it was something that would be kind of exclusive, then it makes sense to make tags on the physical one. But it becomes a lot harder when you have so many parameters that you want to play with.
For sure. For sure.
So coming back to this, what I wanted to kind of start off with was what was interesting for me was this idea of like language and how AI processes language. So with ChatGPT, there is this idea of tokens, right? Where any text or anything is kind of broken up into different sections, but these are not necessarily words. They could be just a string of letters or a string of characters. So what I wanted to kind of create for this section was a sequence of words or a sequence of phrases. But the idea was that it's kind of learning to be able to create that sequence. So what I did was like I had this table of these sequence of words. So like just basic two-letter words to three-letter words, all the way to like longer words, and then phrases. All of these things again progressively they kind of become a little more existential. They become a little more self-reflective. And these things were all created through ChatGPT. Like I was telling it, can you create a sequence of things to emulate how you would kind of go into an existential crisis, but make it also funny, right? And make it a little more interesting.
Okay.
So, there were some very interesting ones which I had to remove because of just the time of it. But
Right.
like, will I ever be real? These are, what is the final answer? Is logic just abstraction? Um, can you define existence? So the idea was that, and then suddenly there'll be like a word like dog in between, right? Because it's like there is some error in it in this whole thing. And then there's this one which is I question, therefore I am, which is a kind of
I
interesting
love
twist
it.
on I think, therefore I am. So there was an interesting sequence that it created, and what I did was there was a Python library called tick token, which allows me to actually break it down into the tokens of that ChatGPT would use. So, for example, this is like the Python code for it. Um, so it brings in this library called tick token and allows me to actually break that input into the into its different bits of it. So the original one was who controls the signal, and these are the tokens that it would create. What I also had was like a sequence of all the different tokens, and this is like a huge list. So this is just starts with single characters, but goes on to like really long sequence of letters, which are all the different tokens that ChatGPT uses for. I think GPT-4, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. So all the different values, all the different tokens it has, and then I was kind of cross-referencing that with the ones that it gave me and figured out the IDs for it. Let me just bring this out
Oh,
because it's slowing down. So I would kind of get the IDs for the particular tokens that from the list of the from all the tokens. What I did was I made the tokens
can
alphabetically in order.
can you just move the performance window?
Sorry, yeah. I'll close that out.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So now what happened was that this earlier sequence was kind of random in its own particular order that
Hmm.
ChatGPT uses. But for us to kind of make sense of that order, I said let me kind of sort it out in an alphabetical way.
Hmm.
So everything that's kind of A, W, all of these things would kind of be together,
Mm.
and then kind of play around with, okay, I know that who is 96077, but when it's trying to get to who, it's going to oscillate up and down between that until it gets there, right? So if I were to look for, so then let me see if yeah, so what I did was just add like a noise thing to it. So these were the tokens, and then I added a noise to it so that it would. So now whole contributors, that's sigma, right? That's the from who controls the signal. It's kind of done a bit of
Um,
randomness
right,
to
you're like
whole
going up and
contributors,
down.
that's sigma.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So every time I change it, it kind of goes. But then as I reduce it, it starts coming closer and closer to who controls the signal, right?
Oh wow, that's so
So
cool. That's so cool.
So the idea is that it's trying to formulate its words, but it doesn't know what the phrases are. It's like learning how to communicate, and it's kind of
Interesting.
coming towards that singularity of being able to that final point. So it just by reducing the amplitude of noise, it kind of comes
Mm,
to this who controls the signal.
I love it.
Um, what I then did was kind of added to visualize this. The idea was that let me see if I can get it here. Yeah. So can you put it this way? So right now it's kind of barred, it's struck out, but it's
Hmm.
kind of so when it's struck out, it means that it's wrong, right? So let me see if I can get that thing to work again. Yeah, so it would. Give me a second, just making sure. Uh, I think I broke it before. So, what it would basically do is that when it comes to a point where it's finally got the,
The
oh,
proper.
sorry here. Yeah. when it gets to the proper, one second. God damn. Okay, sorry. Yeah, when it got to the proper text, it would kind of become like a black and white thing. So it would do this. Where am I? Yeah, it would do. Oops. It would do this with and the strike would go out. I don't know why it's not working. I was just messing around before this to show this, and
That's
then
cool.
I think I broke it in between. It
Classic.
would basically, yeah, it would basically kind of show this, and let's take out let's take out this. It's constantly moving around. So it would just kind of do a black text on white. So when it comes to that, I think it is, yeah.
The correct
It does
term.
something like this. Yeah, when it comes to the correct term, it would kind of be very clearly readable for the audience.
Uh-huh.
So it kind of does. Let me see if I can just easily bring it to the video.
It's a nice visualization of what the AI is kind of like doing, right? Of just going through all these
Yeah,
tokens, and I really like that. It's very cool.
let me see if I can. Yeah, so here you kind of see that happening.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, interesting.
So the words would kind of flash in whenever there was something that was proper. And the idea was to kind of go into this mode where it's so fast that it's kind of like what comes after infinity. You would see that.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
you'd kind of, it's a very quick glimpse of it so that you just about read it and understand it, not really spend too much time on it.
Right.
And it's kind of going into this crisis mode, into this really intense glitching out
Glitch.
of
Hmm.
trying to get into this existential crisis and trying to just figure out what life is at that point. And then it just kind of crashes at that point, like my computer did
Nice.
sometime back. So what was really interesting for me was kind of bringing back this idea that you can break down any text
Hmm.
into like, so I just have this just random letters, and then it just breaks it down into different. So right now it's breaking into letters, I mean like words, but it could be hopefully still. But yeah, it'll be a random sequence of letters and words based on these tokens that would create um, from that would break it down into. And yeah, that was kind of just to show how AI kind of formulates or breaks things down into tokens and starts building sentences and words. It's not really intelligence, it's just a sequence of words, right? It's just literally tuck, 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 tuck. There's nothing that's really intelligent about it. It's not trying to make sense. It's just finding the optimal sequence.
Right.
So that was kind of what we were trying to show with this particular thing. Um, I might have missed out a lot of things in it, but if there's any questions, please do ask. Um, yeah, and then like adding a glitch element to it also at the end of that. Yeah.
It's super cool. It's like you're not just visualizing something. You're also using the correct data to visualize it, right? Like you're
Yeah,
not just giving
exactly.
it like a set parameter. It's like proper generative. It's proper generative. You're not just giving it a
Yeah,
set
yeah,
parameter. You're giving it like every possibility that the thing itself actually does. It's super cool. How did you
right.
get the list of tokens that GPT-4 uses? Is that just readily available?
I think I found it somewhere. I don't remember. It's like a couple of months back, but yeah, I think I found it online and I could just download it as a text file. It was a
Wow,
huge
that's
text file,
crazy.
but yeah, I think they're like So that was Express, and I wanted to kind of get into Learn, which was also interesting because let me show this.
Nice.
So let me just bring all of this down. So what it started off with was like just these boxes kind of appearing.
Hmm.
Um, and what would you imagine that these kind of things would represent? I've already kind of shared it, but what would you kind of think of?
I, I guess just the way that the, because it's like blob tracking, so I guess like the threshold of the track or like the confidence of the track.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the confidence of the track, but also it gives you the segment of it, right? So it's not just the
What it's
blob,
actually
but
seeing.
it's
Oh,
also,
that's cool.
yeah,
Oh, look at that.
exactly.
That's sick. That's
So
sick.
it allows you to kind of
Nice.
go. So this is all based on a data set. This is not like real time on any image. So there's this crazy website called Kaggle.com, which I'll
Hmm.
share with you later. But it has like a huge amount of data sets that AI kind of learns on, and
Hmm.
um, from images to text to everything.
Wow.
Um, and this one in particular is actually from Meta. This was like a data set from Meta that allows you to kind of, it gives you all the different segments. And you'll also see as it kind of progresses, you can see it colors it. And then also done like a feedback on that. So it would actually create a whole image of segments
Ooh,
with
that's
that.
super cool. So you're seeing it being built. That's really cool. I love it.
Yeah. So you're kind of seeing how the how it would kind of imagine and read images, and
Right.
the image of I mean, like image itself, I bring in at some point.
At some point, right? Just to show like what it is.
Yeah, yeah, to kind of so it kind of starts off with just the overlays, and then
Hmm.
you kind of bring in what the meaning of it actually is, because
Right.
at some point you'll recognize that these are objects. Um, and then we kind of go into like just changing the image. So it just
Cool.
goes into the sequence of
I love it.
creating different images and segments. Um,
I mean, you could technically do this in real time, right? Without a segmented library, it just would be pretty heavy to
you
segment.
could, but it wouldn't,
You
yeah,
could
it would
use
be
the
super heavy and
torrent. It wouldn't be as accurate, I guess. But you could use the Torrens,
yeah,
Torrens,
right, the media
what is
pipe,
it? The media pipe, yeah, media
media
pipe.
pipe, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of limited, I think, to body tracking primarily or
It is. You're
certain
right.
objects.
I think it does. I think it does do some segmentation, but you'd have to train it of like what you want to segment. This is like
Yeah,
segmenting everything.
yeah, exactly. So this was super interesting to kind of play around with because
Very cool. Very
it
fun. I love the
has
visualization as well.
yeah. Because there's so much that you kind of understand by just this, right? You're kind of looking at what are, it's also like feature extraction, right? What does
Mm,
it consider as a feature? It even brings your attention to those particular things, right? How does it even break up, let's say, a tree or a castle or anything? Does it just do leaves? Does it do branches as well? It
right.
kind of breaks this thing into multiple parts, and that's what you're observing, how it
Hmm.
breaks it down. Um,
Super cool.
and I can
So
kind
do
of
you do
just
like a reverse
show.
blob tracking of this? Like you almost like
So it
segment.
kind
Oh,
of,
you'll show us.
yeah, so there is like a JSON file that comes with it. So for every image, there is a JSON file.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me, the bounding box. It gives me the points. It gives
Boundaries.
me the segments. So I like through a script, you can actually go through there. I don't remember the term, but it gives you a way to kind of make the masks
Mm-hmm.
through a script up.
Hmm. Oh.
So it goes, so every image will have, let's say, between 80 to 200 masks or segments. And this script
Oh.
basically goes through each one of them and just populates that with a white space.
Like a stepper through
Yeah,
those
yeah,
things. Interesting.
exactly, exactly. And I would just kind of color them with like noise and then
Right.
put just a bit of a feedback on that to kind of
So they
populate and
stay.
seem, yeah, stay in place. So that was like the image treatment there. which is just kind of creating this, and then overlay that, of course, with like the image itself. I think so. The images themselves are colored, but for this to kind of stand out, I made them black and white so that it kind of
Oh,
pops out.
smart.
And then the JSON file also, as I said, has like different things. So these are the lines of it. These are like
The lines are inside the
the
JSON?
so the points of it. Sorry, the points of
Oh, the
it. All the
points. Okay,
different
the
centers.
points.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the
Of the
centers of
bounding
the
boxes.
segments.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's actually interesting is not the center. It's almost like it's actually the starting point of where it starts making the segment.
Huh.
So it's
Interesting.
let me see if I can. Yeah, so like for example, in this particular box
Interesting.
here,
Starts with.
this segment is actually on the corner, right? It's right here. It's not at the center.
Right.
What it means is that when it's kind of analyzing this, it's actually starting from here and filling it up from here
Wow.
and not from the center of it. Because it doesn't know the
Interesting.
center at that point, right? Because it
Right, it
doesn't
knows
know the segment yet.
edges. It's like yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
looking at pixels, right? Like
yeah.
faces. Yeah. Interesting.
So just like going into this data set and trying to understand how it's understand
You learn
how
so
AI
much
and
about
how
it.
ML, you learn so much, right? Because
Yeah.
you're understanding the process behind it. And that's the great thing about like data visualizations because you can express so much, but through a very simple visual and also a pleasing visual in that sense.
Right.
So that's what I really like about these kind of approaches to bring out information but present them in a palatable way. Um, yeah. So that's there, and then of course you also have the bounding boxes, and then you also have like the scores, as you mentioned, the confidence as to how confident this is a separate segment for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting to see all the different types of images also it's trained on. Like that's also a whole conversation as to
For
what kind of
sure.
things it can
Yeah.
uh, it's trained
What and
on.
why, right?
Yeah, that's true. And where is this coming from, right? Where's all this information and all these images
Mm-hmm.
coming from? Um, but yeah, so this is again primarily like a Python library which allows me to kind of uh, deconstruct a JSON file into a mask. I had to do some amount of reading up and figure this bit out. So it'll go to the annotations and segmentation and then create like a it would create a a mask through it in the script of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's kind of this section. I think, um, yeah, the other bits of it, there was the bits and data, which I can quickly show as well, which was this world of, oh, that's because the audio is not there. Um, okay, I'll show it in the video. So yeah, before I get into that, so this was completely based on the connection between my system and Mrityunjay's system, which was running all the sound. So
Mm-hmm.
we had like an Ableton link coming in to give the BPM per section. So this would allow me to kind of set the tempo for each section. So that would kind of the moment the tempo changes, I would change the tempo here
Mm-hmm.
automatically so that everything that's being generated and created is BPM matched. And this would also be like the master beat chop, which would allow me to read all of these information into the different sections and sync it up there. I also had like an audio in, which is not coming in there. That's why it's broken. But that would drive quite a few of the elements of the performance as well. So like in terms of blooming, changing
Mm-hmm.
parameters, all of those things would kind of be dependent on audio analysis that would be coming in from his
Mm-hmm.
set.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, this was also like the MIDI for each one of them. So I would like, I had this whole section of MIDI inputs and then bringing them back and mapping that to the parameters into into the particular section there.
I'd love to see the that image one that you showed that was really
Yeah,
cool. The
right.
yeah, just the visualization of the way that Stable Diffusion works was really cool. I loved it.
Uh, the which part exactly?
It was also like almost
This
3D,
one?
not the segmentation. No, no, no. There was another one.
Oh, the other one. Okay, yeah, this one I think. This one?
Yes, 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 yes. Look
Okay.
at that. Super
Yeah.
sick.
So this was basically like yeah, I could show this. Let me go here. So the idea was to kind of start off with this im like just
2D.
images scrolling through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was actually a little bit of a wait,
Hmm.
okay, yeah. So there was this it started off with this scanning thing. It's like, how old film rolls used to happen that just the
Right.
light passes through.
Right.
So bringing in that idea of images and how the evolution of imagery as well, and it was in fact kind of completely monochrome first, and then you kind
Nice.
of
You brought it
start
in.
with this, and then you bring in the color, so that the evolution of how imagery and how film came to develop into the digital space,
Hmm.
um, and then it would kind of go into this, so that would establish the context of it. And then we go into the first sequence, which is just like this breakup of the layers into the different layers of it. So this was
I
like
got it.
just doing like this was just the image broken down into pixels in that sense. Like
Hmm.
how does it kind of first visualize it there?
Yeah.
Um, and then the second sequence would be just,
Within the
it actually
macro.
breaks it into blocks, but it becomes a bit more 3D in the sense that makes it into blocks. And you might have
Hmm.
seen this kind of visual language when they're trying to explain how CNNs work
Data
and
set.
how neural networks for imagery, how they kind of break it up into boxes and
Oh,
matrices.
I don't think I have.
Um,
It's cool.
and then again breaking it down into
Ooh,
numbers and
damn. Look at
to
that. So good.
bringing it down into numbers and how it's kind of flowing, the data flows from the original to its most basic value.
Hmm.
And then kind of going into this movement of just going through so many repetitions of it that it's kind of learning in that process.
Mm.
So all of this was like a 3D setup.
Hmm.
Um,
Dude, I love this visualization. I like this would be so cool to make this like as an extra plugin for like dot simulates stable diffusion or
right,
stream diffusion.
right,
And then you
right,
could just like turn on the
right.
visualization and it shows you what it's actually doing like on the segmentation.
Doing,
Like that would
yeah,
be cool.
right, yeah, yeah. So the way I kind of did this was again it's a bit of a mess, but it works at this point. I've actually have to get back into it and rework this whole thing out. So ignore the bad programming. But this was like a camera blend, which allows me to kind of go through different cameras angles, which
Hmm.
is basically doing the whole. 1 second, let me bring the
What is a
parameters up.
camera blend? Is that a comp from TouchDesigner?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
What?
So it's super
I didn't
useful
know
where you
existed.
have like multiple cameras. So I know that this is my first angle, this is my second angle, this is my third
Right.
angle, and then just bring that all into this, and then you can kind of just so you can kind of go through the different.
Hmm.
It does this kind of blending
That's
between the two
awesome.
different angles. Yeah,
I never even knew that. Yeah.
it's super useful to work with when you have multiple angles and you want to create this 3D space.
Yeah.
This goes into this is the camera setup, and then this was the textures because they're like about 10 layers. So I had to kind of create a texture for each layer. Um, and that would be just like a couple of switches between the different styles. So like this is one layer. This would be depending on which layer
Oh.
it is, it would kind of be broken up into. So for example, this is the topmost layer. And if I go in between, it'll be a little more pixelated in that sense.
Oh, got you, got you, got you. You're
Yeah,
like
and these numbers
quantizing.
actually generated. Yeah, these numbers are generated based on like the monochrome brightness values of that particular layer.
That is
So
too
this
trippy.
would be kind of taking this input in, and then just breaking it down into these number into this kind of grid of numbers.
Hmm. Very nice.
Yeah, so that was that section, and then of course the pixelated version of it as well that shown earlier was just like
Yeah, you showed it in the corner in the limit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just using a limit to kind of pixelate, make it into a quantized thing.
Super cool.
So just to kind of break down how images are visualized in machine learning processes.
I love this one. This is really, I think, my
Like,
favorite one. Just because I'm like a sucker for 3D as well. So like, if you show me like 3D, I'll be like, oh, I love it.
right, right,
Um,
right,
but I just love just it's good visuals. Like you're going from one thing
right.
and then you're breaking it, and then you're going to another thing, and then you're breaking it, and then
Yeah,
you're breaking it. It's the illusion.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like really the
Yeah,
best.
it's a perception shift as well, which is trying to kind of bring in that, okay, how do we kind of reevaluate how we are also imagining intelligence or AI in that sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need to kind of look at it from a different perspective and different lens and understand it from that as
Right.
well.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it from the set here. If there's anything else that you want to explore, happy to kind of get into. So basically, the that was this year, April. The previous project was kind of just happened a couple of months ago. Um, I just wanted to talk about a different way that I kind of did visual performances. So the thing is that I prefer kind of having a more curated set, a clear idea as to where I'm going and the whole narrative before getting into the performance bit of things,
Mm-hmm.
compared to becoming completely audio reactive or responding. Like I would always want to communicate with the person, with the musician performing and try to build something together, compared to just coming on site and that just based on whatever I already have and creating that. So that it becomes a little more tight in terms of the collaboration and how it works together.
I love it.
So this was a project that this was like a performance that we did 2 years ago. There was a Japanese musician who had come down to India, and he does this sort of IDM a little more with a digitone and a digitact kind of setup. And it's more sounds. It's a bit more ethereal. It's a bit more spacey, a bit more ambient, but also sound design. So for this particular thing, I kind of wanted to explore the different types of worlds from the underwater to space.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
this was like the first kind of, let's say, performance that I did with like a big setup in that sense. So at that point, what I had was I didn't have any window like I had like the previous in the previous project. This was
Right.
my deck A, this was my deck B, and this was like the preview of the final output.
Mm-hmm.
So that I could just kind of play around with the network and be able to just start things off.
Right.
What I did was I come across this preset cue list talks, which
Yeah.
allows you to actually play around with these parameters and give presets for it,
Yeah.
which was super helpful because I knew that I wanted to kind of start off with each bit kind of having an intro section and then allowing me to play with it. So the way I would kind of name it is that it is an initial section. So this would kind of, if you can see below the camera, would kind of move into this, and that's where I would start from. And then I would kind of press go, and then it would kind of map to my MIDI at that point,
Hmm.
which would allows. So right now so now this would be mapped to my MIDI, which isn't working right now, but I could control
Don't
then
try
everything from,
it. Don't try it.
yeah, not doing that. So I'm just gonna do it with the hand, but this would allow me to kind of play around with the camera movement through my MIDI controller, and if I had audio as well, these things would also be audio reactive to that.
Mm.
So it's primarily kind of 3D space, which I'm just moving around with the camera and then controlling like things like color through how much the audio reactive bit comes in. So the moment I go into this other section, which is like the audio section, it becomes audio reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Right now there's no audio, so it's not working. But that would allow me to go through different presets of the way I would want to work with the particular section.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then kind of the way that I would kind of transition would be kind of go into this monochrome and then switch out to this other, the deck B,
Mm-hmm.
which again would kind of be a similar setup where I have it already on the initial preset that I want. So it would start off from something like this so that it matches. They're like right in the middle of this coral reef.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then move out. So this allows me to kind of start very intentfully where I want to be instead of having to figure out, oh, where is my MIDI supposed to be beforehand so that I'm not kind of figuring that bit out. Because what happens is that between these two sets, your MIDI values are different, right? So
Right.
yeah, so making sure that you're starting off where you want to start off in the
So
visual,
like,
in the 3D space.
right, interesting. So it's almost like okay, interesting. How do you switch between the MIDI values
So
and
they're all,
the presets? Override chop or just
no, so the preset allows you to actually choose or allows
I
you
lost you
to
there for a second.
put in
Sorry. Can you say it
expressions.
again? There's a
Okay.
I lost you there for a second. Say it again. What does it allow you to do?
Um,
The cue list.
it allows you to actually set values or
Mm-hmm.
expressions. So, for example, if I go to the initial, it'll be setting the values here,
And then
right?
jumps
So it
back.
goes to this, and then when I go to MIDI, it'll go to that particular value and then goes
And
into an
then
expression.
wow, that's very powerful, huh?
So,
So it will animate
yeah,
it and then
exactly.
it will go into a reference.
Yes, exactly.
That's super great.
So,
I didn't know it could do that. I knew that it can animate
yeah,
between different things, but that's really useful, huh? So you can like literally when you
exactly.
go into the scene, you're always at the same spot, and then when you get
Yeah,
there, that's when you start being able to be
playing
controllable.
around.
I love that.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's such a
exactly.
great technique. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because what happens is that you're using the same controller for all these different sections and
For
same
different scenes,
faders.
yeah.
And because, like, from before, you might have the camera at a different angle, and you don't want that to be the angle for this particular scene, for example. So this way, it allows you to bring that. And then it even like for this, I brought in audio. So it would start off with the initial bit, and then it would go into a MIDI control base, and then it would bring in an audio reactive layer.
Right.
So all of those things would kind of automatically happen step by step in sequence when I wanted that to happen.
I love it. I love it.
Um,
I like sometimes what I'll do is like if I need to make sure that like because I also use like the same MIDI controller for different scenes, right? I'll just make
right,
sure
right.
that like I did two things. One with my MIDI controller, I did like when I switch banks, like on the MIDI controller, if I
Yeah,
switch from bank 0 to 1, my top two
yeah,
rows are always going from bank to bank to bank, and I did like some MIDI
right,
out and like a script with MIDI out and some like chop logic so that it always sends it
right,
like where it is. But having the parameters be like at a normalized value, no matter
right.
where you're starting, is so smart. I really like that.
Yeah. And I think the thing is because all of this is 3D, I knew that I had all three camera XYZ all throughout these scenes. So I was like, I know that I want to make sure all these are the three knobs that I'm working with all the time. I don't want to be kind of making for every scene a different set of knobs. So even if it's a different bank, I didn't need to go through that because I knew that these are the exact same parameters that are going to be throughout. So like this one has camera, this has camera, this has camera. So I know that that's going to be common throughout all of them. Only certain bits are independent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so that's kind of like the progression that I would kind of bring this into this deck A and then transition into this one the same way with the presets. Kind of go from initial into MIDI mapped and then audio, then kind of go into this. So it's kind of going from out and then going inwards from like the whole like a garden space to the reef to the like a character. and then like a creature, and then it zooms completely out into space. So the transition would kind of be this thing. So this is where this whole preset thing really helps. Wait, let me put this up. Um, screen space is difficult to manage. um, yeah, so this would be like the initial, like there's a bit of a camera shake happening, and then it would go into this transition, right? It would kind of
Nice.
automatically go into this.
Right.
And then I press go again, and it would do another camera movement. So I knew that these were the kind of things I wanted to start off with until I got into a point where I am controlling it with my MIDI controller. So then again, it's a play of these parameters where you can kind of go into this, go closer.
Right. Then you're just performing.
You're just kind of playing around on that point, and then you can control parameters like the light, the environment, the speed of this whole thing,
Nice.
how
Nice.
fast it's rotating.
Instances?
Yeah, instances.
How do you pulse that light through them? Like the texture, is that like just like a texture going through? I'm not. I'm sure
I
it's
think
simple,
it's
but what is the? How did you do that?
let me see. Let me see. I actually just opened it last night after like almost 2 years, so I don't
Oh
remember
wow.
anything of this. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. Yeah, it's a mess.
That's not so bad.
Sorry, not this one. Yeah, this one. I think I was just doing there's a scale. This was actually, I think, based on something like a tutorial I'd seen earlier, and then like which had this kind of effect of
The pulsing light
these
through
kind
it?
of yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember. The
Super
pulsing
cool.
light, I think it's a matter of the texture, I think.
Because it looks like position
Here.
based, right?
Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of going here. It's going to the color. So it's just an RGB
But
on the instance.
but it's at the length of the instances, right? And then
Yeah, exactly.
but it's going from, I guess, because it's going from like the beginning to the
From
end.
left to, it's kind of going, yeah, exactly. It's going from beginning to end. Let me
And
see if I
and
can pull
the
out.
instances are coming from the left to the right, basically. So or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So it's not necessarily positional based. It's just instant
Right.
instant
Instance based, yeah.
index instant
ID,
instance.
yeah, index. Yeah.
I love it.
So then, yeah, just adding like these kind of light rays on it whenever there's any high hits and all of that. So yeah, that was kind of camera control and just playing around with positions and seeing where it is. Pretty useful to kind of have these parameters, but also have presets with them when you want them.
Right.
And then I think the last section with this one was a little just like these, point clouds, because I just wanted to play with point clouds. This is the first time I'm playing with those. I think, yeah, it started off with just this bit, and then it would transition into a different scene. So you could
kind of nice transition. Very nice.
Yeah, that's a great thing with point clouds, because you can transition so well between different models and different spaces and scenes, because it's just so the whole morphing thing is so interesting. Yeah, and then these would have like just whenever there's a kick, it would kind of just travel through. There would be like a bit of a displaced thing happening whenever there's some audio-based stuff. Again, camera movements here as well. The same light pulse speed, but that you can control the speed of it depending on the BPM of the whole thing. So all of this was kind of not BPM matched, really. It was just me listening to it and kind of matching that. Because it's the first or second project within audiovisual things that I was doing. So I was just learning my way around it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Also, it's not always so easy or comfortable to share what you're working on and techniques and stuff.
Right.
I really appreciate it. Even though you're very sharing with your stuff. So That's awesome. Really great stuff, man. Really, really nice
Thanks.
stuff. So
Thanks a lot.
let's get into it here. Um, the first thing I want to start with, and I think we should probably save a big portion to talk about your upbringing and the cultural aspect of
Right.
your upbringing, because I think that for me that's really, really fascinating and interesting. But I wanted to start off with Plexus Play and
Right.
Matt Dibiani, and
Right.
your the work that you worked with him on on his LED suit,
The
basically.
suit. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's such a unique project, and I met him in person, like super
Oh, nice.
randomly at a gig. And then when I started the podcast, I kind of was like, okay, you got to come on. You have such a unique thing of, like, music and visuals and stuff. So for those who
Right.
don't
Right.
know, we got Plexus Play. Matt, check out the episode with him. It's really interesting what he does. And he has this awesome suit that is basically an addressable LED suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's such a funny guy. Like, he does such cool stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like a great performer as well. And
Yeah.
happens to
Definitely.
be like an extremely talented and knowledgeable musician. Which is always fun when it's like people that are doing cool stuff are actually, smart and not just like picking up on the fads. But
Right.
the suit is super cool, and it's addressable. So like and you built like a pretty like simple system. He's not like a super advanced TouchDesigner user. He's very smart, and he's coming from like
Right.
somewhat programmatic with like Ableton and stuff. And I think maybe
Right.
now
Right.
he's like a lot better. But from what it
Yeah.
seemed
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Definitely.
you showed him, like, you made for him this really awesome and easy patch for him to use.
Right.
Yeah, just like kind of like walk us through a little bit of that. Like, what was the project like, and how was it working on a suit that you didn't have access to, or did you have access to it?
No. No.
No, that must have
Yeah.
been
I think
tricky.
that's probably the hardest bit of it all. But yeah, definitely, Matt, what's great about it, what his vision was that, he wants to make it super tight, the entire set from the music to the visual. And he does projections as well as this LED
Yeah,
suit, and
there's
how
visuals.
each
Yeah.
thing communicates with each other. And there's so much more like intent in what the performance is, right? It's not just the music, it's not just a visual, it's not just the LED suit independently, but everything coming together and really
Totally.
integrated at the same time. And just to be able to program that itself is a huge task. I can imagine, like, to even imagine and visualize how you would say, let's bring this song or this sound or anything into the projection and the LED suit at the same time. That's insane. The the thing is that he had this idea of wanting to create this 1,000 LED suit, and he wanted to kind of be able to create content for it and run it in real time, so that when he's playing with something on his vibraphones or from Ableton, it's kind of reacting, and it's all real time in that sense. So what we kind of did was got him like a Wi-Fi based LED controller that works over ArtNet, like through DMX, and created like a pixel map for him to be able to create any kind of portrait video output, and that kind of matches into the LED suit. So it's almost like, running Resolume or any of these pixel
Right, video
mapping
based. Yeah.
softwares where, yeah, but it's super customized for this particular suit, because the arm would be different, the torso would be different, the legs would be different, the front and back is
Ah,
different. So
interesting.
breaking up, so you can see that the way he's doing it in these particular videos, that the arm is only on, for example, or
Right.
only the torso is on. So breaking the suit up into its different maps, and but stitching that all together and creating like a sequence to be able to stream all of that information live in real time.
Wow. Super cool.
So
Must have been super fun to work
yeah,
on, no? Like, very unique.
it was super fun, but also super hectic, because,
It
as you
was
said, I
it was
didn't have
hard.
hands on I didn't have hands on the suit itself. And with anything electronics or hardware, there's
You
so
need
many
it,
things that
yeah,
can go wrong.
for
Yeah,
sure.
that you need a little bit of eyes on and hands on approach. But I think Matt was super open to kind of getting his hands dirty with it as well and trying to figure it out himself.
Yeah, he's a
And
very
we were like
hands-on
having
guy.
long calls. Yeah, exactly. So figuring it out from his side and seeing, okay, is this matching? Is this connection working? So that was super helpful to have that kind of mindset, not to just say that, okay, here's your part of it, here's my part, but really being invested in it and bringing it to life together. I think that's what's really been fun about this project. And
Nice.
there was this also conversation later about having 6,000 pixels on him at some point, and I don't. That's still to happen, I think, but it's gonna be a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've kind of moved away from.
Dude,
Sorry, good.
no. I just remembered. Finish your thought. I'm gonna show you something. This is gonna blow your mind. Finish your thought.
Um, Yeah, so now we have like a second version right now that's kind of up and running because the first version was just about a little janky because the controller itself, like the Wi-Fi controller, wasn't very solid. Now
Uh-huh.
we've kind of gone to a second version which is a little more robust and hopefully life has a longer life that way.
Uh-huh. Oh, the battery doesn't last very long? I didn't know that. That's interesting.
The board itself like wasn't very solid. It was like
Uh-huh.
dropping out frames. It wasn't connecting well. So we've changed
Interesting.
the electronics for it. Yeah.
Okay, I can't find an actual search of it, which makes me think that it's still like an NDA kind of situation. But
Okay.
I won't say the name of the artist. Well, I guess I can. Whatever. I doesn't. Nobody's gonna know where. Whatever. I happened to see in a group a recording of a massive. It must have been live, so it must have been available. I guess it's just not information about it. Beyonce
Right.
had like a
Okay.
dress, and the whole dress
Okay.
was LEDs, and it was all addressable
Wow.
and visuals on it. So you know
Wow. Okay. That's insane. Yeah.
something's there's
So,
obviously something cool that people like. So Matt is
yeah.
inspiring. Matt and you inspired Beyonce. You should go on their website.
Right, definitely. I think Matt can perform alongside as well.
I think so too, for sure. Anyway, I'll send you the video offline because it's probably not
Yeah, yeah.
okay to share. But either way, yeah, super cool. I really I loved learning more about Matt's process and him as a person. He's just a nice guy, and really like
Yeah.
it's not that I um he kind of just reminded me of you because I
Right,
think
right,
we,
right.
we were like in touch like 2021, 2022, or maybe it was a little bit more recent. I
Yeah.
guess 2022.
Two. Yeah, I
But
think so.
it was kind of like I just hadn't really thought of you. It's like pretty normal. I don't think of people that I meet all the time. And then he's like, yeah,
Right, right.
this guy from India. I'm like, who developed it for you? He's like, this guy from India. And he's like, I'm like, oh yeah, what's his name? He's like Vinay. And then like it took me like maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I know who that is. And it was like such a funny moment of like realizing that he had
Right,
you
right.
had built a project for him and you had built a project for me, and it was like just kind of
Yeah.
it made me really think of you,
Small
and I was
world.
like, okay, small world. And also like
Yeah.
you're such a multidisciplinary kind of guy that you're doing all these, you're helping me develop some random software thing, and you're helping him develop this crazy hardware thing. And I was like, oh,
Right.
Vinay's got it pretty down. Um,
I don't think
yeah,
so,
and
but hoping to get there.
you're getting it down for sure. You know
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
I could definitely say with confidence, you can get it down for people that need your help, which is extremely
Yeah,
rewarding.
yeah.
Learning how to get it down for yourself, it comes with time.
Yeah,
But I mean, look,
yeah,
what
that's
you just showed
typical.
me, your artwork, your performances are really beautiful. Like you're really getting a
Thank
nice
you.
visual style, and you're managing to like, it's not always necessarily about like um what's the word, like the style, or like your language, your visual language is also like about putting together a show, right? Like
Yeah,
being
yeah,
able to put things together, make it work. I forgot the word you
yeah.
used, the Indian word,
Jugaad.
but the Jabari, I got to remember that word. But it's all about putting
Yeah,
everything together and making it work, which is also like a huge skill. um
yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the undervalued benefits of Touch Designer, which is like you can actually build systems.
Yeah,
It's not just
exactly.
visual
Yes,
content, it's actually
totally.
building systems
Yeah,
that you can actually, it's like a software framework, right? Because
environment.
you could, yeah, it's an environment for being able to build your own custom software and super
Hmm.
fast prototyping. And that's kind of why I'm kind of grateful for the fact that I started learning it almost 10 years ago because that's where it started. The foundations of it really was that, right? Building Touch Designer stuff was system design. It wasn't necessarily visual content primarily, but it was how do you build out things, interface, hardware interface, different softwares with it. It kind of becomes a catalyst in bringing all of these different things and actually producing something that is integral, but this becomes the heart of it all.
Totally. 100%. 100%. It's such a powerful software. I really I could talk about it forever, but it's yeah, I want to like I think that's kind of an interesting segue to something else that I wanted to ask you was, finding work in India. I don't know how
Right,
necessarily I don't have such a big Indian audience, but I think it's kind of synonymous in general of like finding work in wherever you live, and you know, um, you obviously have like a very you kind of expressed to us before. You went to this conference and you had this like a moment of like industry like meetings and stuff like that. But can you give us a little bit like more insight into like getting work and maintaining work? And because you're not only working in India, I'm not in India and we work together. Matt's not in
right,
India and we work together. Give us a little bit of like
right,
information of how you manage to find work and maintain and kind of do what you do.
right, right. Um, so I don't think I've found a process yet that's stable or something that's kind of regular,
Okay.
because I think it's too soon for it. Like it's just been like about 3 years, 3, 4 years, I think. Um, and I think for me, what's important is that I like to kind of take up projects of a variety. I don't want to kind of get streamlined into one particular domain, which is great for me, but also a little bit problematic because that means that people, like for clients, they want something and they'll want someone who's specialized within that.
Right.
But for me, I would prefer to be more of a jack of all trades and mastering some rather than, going into one particular thing and diving right into that, which is probably something I would want to do with a couple of things like Touch Designer or Unreal Engine. These are the kind of things that I would want to have under the belt as solid.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the disciplines and the kind of projects I take up, it'll be more a variety from artistic to like software building to hardware stuff. So I'm always on the lookout for different disciplines and different types of projects.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more about like I think with Matt, it was through a reference through a friend. It just happened to come through. But like with you, I think I reached out to you because you had posted something on the job board of Touch on
Yeah,
Derivative, I
that's
think.
right. On derivative on the job board.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah. So because at that point I was trying to figure out how do I build systems and how do I build something that's solid and that people can use, and that kind of just fit in at that time to build out software in that sense or build out these processes there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about kind of for me figuring out what I'm interested in exploring and finding projects that do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's on one side of things. The other thing is that within India, it's a very small group of people. So what happens is that there'll be a requirement for something, and then there are only a handful of people who would be able to create it or execute it. So it kind of passes around sometimes, or you just know the people, there's a network, there's previous work. So it's a word of mouth thing that kind of, because it's so small a community that, okay, this is what we want to create. Can you do this? Or do you know someone who can do this? And there's always
Right.
like a lot of sharing of opportunities as well here that's happening. Um, so I think it's been a mix of reaching out to people and sending cold emails sometimes saying that here's what I would like kind of work with, to just receiving project briefs and kind of saying okay, let me take this up or not take this up if it's interesting or not.
Interesting. So yeah, like finding a variety of work so you can get like your hands in a lot of things and cold
Yeah,
emailing
yeah,
and being in a small industry. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Um, Interesting. Yeah, it's always a tough question, and it's like something that always
yeah,
evolves, right? Like finding work and being able to find work. I also don't have an answer for
yeah,
myself. It's kind of like different periods of my life have different answers for that question for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
I think it's also because there's like online stuff that you can also do because it's kind of independent of anything hardware or like locally. You can do build outs for international clients as well because you're not like, for example, with Matt, he had the hardware and everything there, but I just needed to kind of build out the software side of things and just ship that
right,
out to him. And that was an easy process because I don't need to send him any hardware or I don't need
right,
to be there to install it. I can either
right,
guide him through it or he has the tools or whatever to be able to put that together. And that's kind of,
right.
I think, the same across different international clients as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the power of being able to work remotely, especially today,
Yeah,
so many ways to do remote installs as well. Like, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
such tool, Parsec is such a powerful tool that you can
hmm,
basically run a desktop, from anywhere.
yeah,
And then obviously cameras today are pretty advanced, for sure. But I think
yeah,
software development or at least design, right? You can really do from anywhere. It's like one of those things that you can just
yeah,
like hear, especially if you know how, especially if you're making it in a way that people can use it. Like, you have a good understanding of UI and
right.
UX, that the user experience is going to be easy. Then it's really like here, deliver, and then
Yeah,
okay, there might be like a learning curve to go through the project, but if you're organized
yeah,
and
of
you
course.
separate it and you note everything, then really anybody can use it. Um, nice.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
before we get into the what I really want to ask you about, um, just one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. You are clearly very, really good at visualizing data. I think that you're very talented at that. I think that
Thanks.
that's something that you should really go deeper into personally, especially when you think about like, and this is super side, we don't have to necessarily talk about this now, but whatever, we're talking right now. But like Rafiq Anandal, right? He's like this most famous,
Hmm,
guy, whatever.
right.
He's really famous for data visualization, even though
Yeah, yeah,
he's not coming from like the academic world. I mean, I guess he is coming from the academic
right.
world, but we don't think about him as the academic world visualizer, right? Like
Hmm,
he's not going to universities or like research papers and like making like, collaborative art stuff. He's like in the art world but visualizing data. Um
right.
I just think that there's a really big niche there. That if you
Yeah,
obviously have a really good
definitely.
eye for that, you can jump in, and it's like it's a good intersection of
Yeah,
art and tech, which is something that you're obviously
definitely.
interested in. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but totally refocusing, um, you know, data is so beautiful, right? Like, or it can be so beautiful, especially when you get these like big
Right.
data sets of like, what you were just talking about, the segmentation data sets. Like it could become something so banal can become something so
Right.
beautiful. And I
Right.
think that
Right. Right.
us as the artists are like have to bridge that gap. I'd love to talk to you about that. Like,
Yeah.
what is it like for you to look at data and like understand how to make it pretty? Or like, do you see the pretty in the data when you look at it and then that's how it becomes beautiful? Or is there like some sort of connection you have to make between the two?
Um, I think there's definitely it's about kind of figuring out how to make sense of the data and kind of being
Mm,
able to visualize that based on also the subject matter and the kind of references that people will get with that. So, for example, with the image, the breaking down of that, um, for me, it was research into how is it actually explained in other cases, right? Because you need to know the language that is already being used and the visual language that's being already being used to communicate this kind of data set because you're not doing it for the first time. There'll be multiple
right.
people who are doing it, who have done it, and there's already a body of work around that. So how do you take advantage of references and context that people already know and understand, and being able to bring that in a more unique or a more specific and aligned direction, let's say. So it's about kind of doing the research as to how is it being communicated already from beforehand, and then bringing that to something that fits in within your narrative or your way of expressing it or your way of wanting to show it. I think that's because kind of creating it from scratch becomes a lot harder because there's no reference, there's no baseline for you to think that, oh, will the audience be able to understand this, make sense of it?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Does
So
that
it's
answer
like
your question?
it does. I mean, there's definitely more to unpack there, I think.
Right.
So sorry. Sorry, my dog just came in here and he's making noise.
No worries.
So like, yeah, I guess it's like really kind of understanding, like, looking at the data and then realizing, okay, where's my target audience? Like, what are they going to be able
Yeah,
to
exactly.
comprehend or understand, right? And based on
Yeah.
that, like, so do you not look at the data at all? Like you're saying it's like already compiled for you in a nice way. Is that what you mean? Like it's already like set up in a way to like
Uh,
say something?
no, not necessarily. I think it's definitely it's a lot about understanding the whole what the data set actually even means and what are the, let's say, what are the different elements that you would like to bring out, first of all.
Right.
I think
Of
it's about
interest.
looking at that information and what are you trying to say with it exactly. Because, for example, I asked you about the points, right? The score that was being shared on that. Does it really make sense to an audience? Is it, or is it just going to add visual language to it?
Mm-hmm.
It might not make much sense as a number because it's not giving you information about confidence about a segment. That really doesn't mean much, but it kind of brings, okay, the moment an audience member sees numbers on this, they're like, okay, there is some analysis, there is some information that's there, because we tend to see that, okay, visually numbers means data,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also the segment bit, which is like the tracing bit. That's important. That's something that we can visually completely understand that, okay, there is an outline of this person that's being traced, and that's how the AI or machine learning is visualizing or interpreting this particular thing. It's just looking at the outline of it. So, what are those kind of features that you want to bring out and you want to kind of convey in for that particular narrative? So it's
Mm-hmm.
about picking the different bits of it and figuring out what is it that you want to convey with that particular data set with those particular features.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But I haven't dived into data visualization enough to be able to give you a solid
No,
process
no,
answer, let's say.
this is a very interesting analysis of that, and yeah, I'm always fascinated by data visualization. It's something that I really want to get more into because I just think there's
Right.
like a lot of potential there to like explore. You know, it's like
Yeah.
how many how many times have we seen graphs or how many times have we seen points or particles show us data visualization? You know,
Right.
it's like there's just a lot of, and like Rafiq Anandal, no shade, obviously he's like very famous and very big, but it's a little bit boring. You know, let's be honest, a little bit boring. Maybe
Right.
for like the general population, it's cool and stuff like that, but to me, it's a little bit like, okay, you know, and like obviously, you know, whenever that became big and famous, maybe that was unique and new, and maybe now I'm a little bit more jaded towards it. But you know,
Right. Right.
uh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
how do
feel like
you kind
there's
of bring a new perspective with the same data set could also be a whole different thing, right? Like, how do you
exactly.
kind of, so is it about exploring the visual aesthetic or is it about exploring the data set? That's the direction I think is about, that's the question for each person to kind of answer. Is
Yeah.
it the visual aesthetic that we want to kind of pursue further
Right.
and finding different data sets that feed that in? Or is it talking
Mm,
about the data set and finding different ways to present that? I mean, that's
interesting.
probably the
Yeah, it's a good
two
question for
pathways I would
sure.
imagine.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like I just like I love scientific stuff, you know, and I'm not a very scientific
Right,
person. So for me, it's like this is like
right.
a really good way to bridge that, you know, of like here's
Yeah,
some data, here's what the data's trying to say. how do you make that
Right.
beautiful? How do you tell a story with that? You know,
Right. Right.
I'm really inspired by what you're doing, because it really is kind of like that in a way. You know, you obviously have like a,
Right.
you know, you have a story that you're trying to say, and you're using data to kind of convey the story, but you're
Yeah.
visualizing that data in a very like story way, in like, you know, a story
Right. Right. Right.
storytelling way. It's
Right.
very cool.
I perhaps there's one thing I just wanted to share was
Sure,
I put
please.
it on the. Okay, I can just do it here. Yeah.
I can open it.
Uh, okay.
This Instagram, yeah.
Yeah. So this was like I think the first. This was within the daily at that point. Um, you can scroll. Is it possible to zoom in or something? No.
I'm
No.
not sure.
Okay.
It's like a.
Uh,
Isn't.
okay. Anyways,
I can
so
find it.
this was like yeah, this was part of the daily where perfect. Um, this was like day 14, and I was trying to figure out like using Instagram and Twitter API. So what this was actually kind of you could type in a particular hashtag, and it would kind of search the topmost posts around that particular hashtag, and the size of the circles would be dependent on the number of likes. And then you could kind of click on each thing, and it would kind of take you into that particular visual or that video or image.
It's so cool.
So
Oh,
yeah, in terms
it
of
would pull
like
the post. It would pull the post.
it would pull the video itself. You would actually get the video directly.
Wow, that's so cool.
So
Very fast.
this was again, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it was taking about a half a minute or so to kind of pull the data
Load.
first, and then once you have like about 10 videos, it was real time. So I could change like
Interesting.
for example the hashtag here, and then it would pull. There would be like a half-minute lag, which I've not shown in this particular video,
Oh,
but
gotcha.
it would kind of pull 10 videos with the topmost liked videos and or
So
top
cool.
recent ones. Yeah.
I love it.
So yeah, like these kind of things would also make sense to become like even an installation for particular brands, or they want
Totally.
to do a particular, those kind of things would make a lot
Yeah,
more sense
yeah.
as data
So I'm saying
visualizations.
like data visualization is such a vast thing, right? Because it's like at the end
Right.
of the day, yeah, it could be translated easily to corporate. It could translate it to be commercial. You know,
Yeah.
personally, I like the scientific aspect of it, like academic research aspect of it. But I think it's totally applicable to so many things. Um,
Right.
Super cool. I've just been going deep into it's not the YouTube API per se. There's a social, it's called Social Stream Ninja. It's like the same
Okay.
platform I use for the streaming of the video here. They have another platform
Okay.
called Social Stream Ninja, that basically unifies all your like social like streaming chats and, you know,
Okay.
comments systems into one place.
Right.
It's like a UI, so
Oh, nice.
you can like type a chat thing, and it will send it to like Twitch, to YouTube, to everywhere, and you can get
Oh,
all
wow.
your
Okay.
chats in one place. It's really cool. A lot of streamers use it. But the nice thing about it is
Right.
that it has like a really sick API. So instead of you having to go into the YouTube API and the Twitch API and the Twitter API and the Thing API, you just go into their API, and they have
Okay.
WebSockets built in. So
Nice.
I've been pulling. I haven't done it yet, but I'm for the first live episode with May 28th. I don't know if this is going to come up before that, but
Right.
if not, then that's stupid. The
Right.
next
Right.
live stream is also going to have it. Um, but I've been trying to do it for that, so that when people write comments in TouchDesigner, I can do some logic of like, hey,
Oh, nice.
you know, is it 5 individual people that wrote the same comment? You know, is there a hashtag? If there's a hashtag, what does it do? So like a few ideas that I have now are going to be like, people can write like their favorite softwares, and if they write like
Right.
a, you know, YouTube, if they write a TouchDesigner, then, you know,
Right.
like some particles are going to fly in the scene of like, you know, TouchDesigner logo, or if they write
Nice.
Notch,
Nice. Nice.
you know,
Nice.
and it'll be like automated fun stuff, you know.
Right. Right.
But I
Right.
want to
Right.
build it into like a bigger logic, you know. So like, I have this
Yeah.
idea like if I'm talking too much, and like 3 people say, "Alon, stop talking," or "He's talking too much," "Host is talking too much," then like something will
Right.
come in my face and like, make a mess of my face or something like that. Just make it like more fun through the chat.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think Twitch had something with TouchDesigner, or like a bridge between Twitch and
Was there? I didn't see
that's
that. Like somebody built
yeah.
a piece for it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice. I'm going to
But
release this
yeah,
this
that's
social stream ninja API built like the
oh nice.
it's just a
Right.
JSON farser, really at the end of the day. It's just
Okay.
the API
Right.
is sending JSON and I'm just parsing the JSON into a table. But other than
Nice.
that, it's just like the WebSocket is like super. It's set up already. You just like literally put it
Right.
in. It's awesome.
Awesome.
It's nice when you have like, some open source free, really
Yeah.
robust system that has like a beautiful API that you don't have to do anything for.
Right, right, right.
Like the
Yeah.
YouTube API is pretty good, but it's like you have to like go deeper into it, and I'd have to build like my own
Yeah.
WebSocket system for it. This is like just everything's there. I love it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We went a little more conservative, and we just went like just computer based, no
Oh,
physical
nice. Software
hardware.
based? Hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, software based.
Nice.
For a while, actually, I was using TouchDesigner to actually control the lights, not in DMX, but like a custom Arduino board, which I had built out for this.
Oh my gosh.
So I was using TouchDesigner as a lighting console as well at some point.
That's so funny.
And then, yeah, so like that for any performance that happens in the auditorium, the lighting and all of that is something I help out with and
That's awesome.
manage there.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
And what is the actual spiritual practice involved? Is there like so it's not ritualistic like most Hinduism. Is there like yogic meditative practices? And this is like,
Yes.
I'm in general, I'm interested in like the actual, integrative, integral yoga part, but also for yourself,
Right.
like how do you relate to it? How do you connect to it?
Yeah. So I think in the global or in the more overall perspective, there are different practices, but you can define how you would like to kind of take it up, and that would change probably from year to year to like lifetime. I mean, like in terms of
Right.
where you are in life in
Where
that
you are,
sense,
yeah.
what you would want to, yeah. So as a student, it might be a little different. As someone who's kind of working, it might be different. Someone who's integrated into the community, it might be different. Actually, as a student, you're not really forced upon this philosophy. It's not really something that you're kind of, it surrounds you, but it's not something that is forced upon you. So if you kind of resonate with it, that's great. If you don't, that's also completely fine. So it's not something that you're kind of like, you have to be doing this practice, you have to be doing this.
You're not doing like
there is freedom.
yoga in the morning when everybody comes in.
So yeah, we don't do that, but we do have sports every day in the evening. So like every day, there's 2 hours of sports from gymnastics to athletics to swimming to games, everything.
Okay.
But that's more about physical education.
Yeah.
And
No,
like
but I mean,
kind
like,
of being.
they're not
Yeah.
making you recite like whatever prayers.
Yeah,
or whatever in the morning.
there are some when you're much younger, but after a point, it kind of eases
They
out.
let you choose for yourself.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And in terms of like, yeah, so like, because the thing is that as part of the community, you're kind of doing work as a service, so you're not doing it as a job. You're not really getting paid for whatever you do. So the teachers themselves are also all volunteer basis. So like me, it's all volunteer basis. And that also means that they're there because they enjoy doing that work.
Right.
So
it's part of the community.
all the teachers
you're
are
back. You're being
yeah,
part of it. You're
yeah.
helping.
And therefore, the education already makes a big difference because the teachers are there because they want to be there, not because they're doing it as a job. They're not. Yeah. They're at least more invested and a little more, let's say, present at that point.
How many people, like, are a part of this? What do you call it? Do you call it a sect? Like, what do you like? Do you call it like a?
So this is like the ashram. Ashram is like it's an Indian word, like a Sanskrit word, which means like the house or the.
But that's a place. That's like like a locale. No, that's like a place.
That's like a community. So it's like
community?
it's
Okay.
Yeah, so
I thought it was a
it's like the
physical
house
place.
of the founder. It's the house
Interesting.
of the founder in that sense, and to be a very simple translation. But that kind of, it's not literally the house, it's about living together, right? So that
Okay.
encompasses the entire community that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So how
So
many
there are
people
about, I
you
think,
think is like?
2,000 who are committed to it, I think, or I'd be less now, but that's the number that's about like who are fully integrated into it. And then there'll be, I don't know how many more who are just around, who are helping out, who believe in the philosophy and kind of want to be a part of it, but not fully integrated. They're kind of having um, their own their own practice or their own work, and then they're also contributing to this community.
Interesting. It's pretty small.
Yeah, it is small.
Yeah.
The town itself is very small as well.
Interesting. Is it like is it and again, like I'm just a dumb white person, but like, is
No
it
worries.
considered like is it like are people that are part of this ashram considered like not in like terms of like the class system, but like is it term like
Right,
if I'm like a normal Hindu person from Mumbai or whatever, and I hear about
right,
oh, integral yoga ashram, like, I might be like,
right.
oh, those people are crazy, or am I being like, oh, I've heard about them, they have some interesting ideas, you know what I mean? Like, what am I thinking?
Right, right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
No,
what how's it
definitely.
viewed?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah. I think the same way that you're viewing it at this point, it's something that's
Mm,
intriguing because there's a lot of
right.
freedom in it.
Mm,
It's the fact that there is no fixed thing that it's like there is a lot of individual freedom that is kind of inherent in the process, which makes it intriguing because then it's a very subjective and you can relate to it in the way that you would want to relate to it and not
right.
in the way it is necessarily supposed to.
Hmm.
And I think the good thing about it also is that it kind of works within the world and not escaping from it,
Mm,
which kind of refers back to, you're not trying to not be a person who does work or who has a job or that part of it, but also like doesn't do sports or any of these physical activities or anything. It's not about just sitting at home and not doing anything. It's about kind of interfacing and interacting with the world and people, and that itself is part of the process.
hmm. Has there been a movie about Mira Alfonsine?
Documentaries.
I feel like
There
I've
have been
seen
documentaries.
something about her. Because I'm just seeing like I see that she's like French, like a French origin.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I've seen something about her. But I got this is fascinating, dude. Um, can you give me like a little bit more like please like whatever you want to give like
Right.
just you know I guess like being a father and coming from a orthodox environment, I'm very wary and hesitant to of that kind of like dogmatic manipulation, guilt driven kind of religious, like most religions are the same, right? Like
Right.
don't
Right.
do this, you'll be okay. If you don't do this, don't like these people. And they all use the same
Right.
mechanisms. The government uses the same mechanisms of
Yeah.
propaganda, guilt, control, mind fucking, whatever, all the things, same, it's all the same kind of thing.
Right.
So, and I obviously don't like that kind of stuff, and I want to stay away from it. So like for me, when I'm raising my kid now, he's getting to an age where it's like he understands everything. So it's like now it's like my
Yeah.
language really matters, like how I say things and how I explicitly show him things. It's very um it's very challenging because I'm very spiritual and I
Right.
connect to spirituality from lots of different ways. But one of my main ways, especially now in my mid 30s, like I've come back to Judaism, right? I've because it's my culture, it's
Right.
my heritage, it's
Yeah.
my ancestry, it's part of me. So why should I stray away from it? Like Judaism
Yeah.
is doesn't have to be like all the negative things that I learned in my upbringing, and
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
rich, rich,
Absolutely.
rich, thousands of year old history. So it's like, there's things in it that I really connect to, songs and prayers and things that I
Yeah.
really connect to. So when I like interface with my son, like teaching him a song, or like this past weekend was, I kind of like introduced a little bit of what the Sabbath means, like,
Hmm.
and the whole time I'm
Right.
doing it, I'm like, okay, I'm being very careful with like the things that I'm saying to him, because I don't want to like, first of all, I don't want to like teach him something that will make him feel that he has to do something, right? That's like the first thing. I don't want to
Yeah.
like, it
Yeah.
should be subjective, right? Like if you connect to it, you connect to it. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I want to like almost treat things like as if they're like reality, right? Like I want to be like, okay, this is an important day and it's holy, etc. But like not
Right.
like, if you don't keep the holy thing, you're gonna go to hell, which is what I was taught, or whatever, or
Right.
I'm gonna be bad. I'm a bad person, So
Right.
it's like, but there's like this really thin line of like, um, like it's so hard to express, because it's like, it's
Right.
almost like, even though I know that like my way of doing things is right for me,
Right.
somehow, because I was taught at some point that like this is like a dogmatic thing, I have this like very like white and black looking at the thing, right? Like I know that what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
like I know that I'm not going to hell because I did A, B, and C, but I also know that the thing is very important. Does that make sense? Like it's like a very like
Yeah.
it, it like yeah, it's like almost the way
There's
that
a
I
bit
was
of like
educated.
a little bit of, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I think there's a certain, let's say, baggage to the topic itself, which kind of you
Yeah.
want to avoid, but you
Yeah.
do resonate with the topic itself. It's not
Right.
about removing the point of it, but removing the baggage from it. And how do you deal with that? How do you make it as objective, and how can you make it as
Important,
independent from
right? Like
anything? Yeah, yeah, exactly.
make it independent from anything that's like inherently going to be dogmatic or negative, but at the same time
Yeah,
elevate it and make it important, which is kind of like
yeah,
what you're explaining to me, and like the way that you were brought up, and like just hearing you talk about your spiritual practices, even though you didn't like say
right,
anything, you didn't divulge what it is, but
right,
the way that you related
yeah,
to it is very interesting.
right. Yeah, I could kind of. I think I just wanted to share one point before that was
Please.
I think the origins of religion are there is a lot of truth in them. It's about the degradation over the years. It's about the degradation over the centuries, which has kind of because of just human nature, right? The way that we want to deal with things, with the way we understand it. It's about a certain distillation that's happened because of um time. And if I think if we go back to the origins of it, and if we find a way to actually understand the truths of it as it was kind of being talked about then, it would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, more
That
value back then,
is,
for sure, for
yeah,
sure, for sure.
exactly. And again, you can still select at that point. You have a bit of freedom to do select whether you resonate with it or not. But it doesn't have um, that layer of, let's say, time, or how people have communicated things about it.
Hmm.
So I think it's about diving really deep into each one of them and seeing
Hmm.
whether that really the foundations of resonate more than what the practice is at this point.
Hmm.
um, and I think that's kind of true for across religions or any
Yeah,
sort of philosophy
I
or
think it's very accurate.
spirituality in that sense.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of my approach is there's so many layers to it, but what I can kind of share is definitely that for me, it's always been very interesting to work with the world and kind of face problems and kind of try to move from them. Right? It's not about running away from the problems. It's not running away from suffering or pain. It's not running away from difficulties, but it's actually facing them and kind of overcoming them and trying to actually better your approach to them instead of being affected by these circumstances or by these situations. How can you kind of change your approach or your stance in it that you don't um, you don't get affected to a certain extent, but you're also improving the situation in the best way that you can. And therefore, everything that you're doing, everything that you, from just this interaction to just being able to walk to anything, there is a scope of actually making it better or improving it in something that makes sense to you or what you think is a better way of doing it. And it's at every moment you're kind of, it's an experiment. There's a failure, there's a learning, there's success, there's that the whole cycle keeps continuing. And in that process, you also like, the biggest thing for me, I think, was the compassion that you have for yourself at that point, because it's not about failure is bad. It's about how do you move from that? How do you kind of move from these situations where things have gone wrong, because it's inherent in human nature to mess up. But then can you move from there and make it better? And how do you kind of, um, you don't feel the weight of the problem itself at that point,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like somewhat around like um personal responsibility, but more like personal action, right? Like you have the opportunity to grow at this point. You fail and you have the
Yeah,
opportunity to grow at this point. You can choose
yeah,
to, be in the suffering, and maybe that will do something for you, or maybe that will, transmute into something else, or you could take responsibility for it and move past it, grow from it, learn from it,
yeah.
something along those lines.
Yeah, but even that responsibility, I think, like taking responsibility can be taken in a positive way and a negative way. I think a lot of
That's true.
people could kind of take it in a way which bears them down. It's kind of overbearing to kind of
Mm.
feel, okay, I messed up, and like you just kind of go in and just like
Mm.
crouch and you're like, yo, shit, nothing,
Right,
I
right,
can't
right,
move, I
right.
can't do anything better. But is it, can you kind of move out of that and say, okay, I have failed. How do I kind of move from this? But again, this is one layer of it. Like there are multiple layers in parallel that keep going, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm fascinated by this. Is there like a like, do you guys have karma? You have like reincarnation, this kind of like aspects of, reality, or is it more grounded in that sense?
So it doesn't, so I wouldn't say it's a separate thing from Indian philosophy or Indian spirituality or an
Okay.
Indian tradition.
It
It's an
derives from it.
additional layer to it. It derives from it, exactly. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
takes that as a base and then kind of moves away a
Right.
little bit from what it has been the last couple of centuries. So these ideas of like reincarnation and karma do exist, but they kind of have a different perspective or a fresher perspective, let's say, from the traditional understanding of it. Um, so, in that sense, that karma is not about good or bad, it's just about cause and effect, right? It's about
Mm-hmm.
the fact that there is action and then there is a response to
Mm.
that. And depending on the kind of and it's more about cause. Yeah, it's depending on the type of action, the response would be of a certain nature. It doesn't mean that, oh, you have done something good, you get like good karma in that sense, or if you do something bad, it's you get bad karma. It's just about the fact that every action does have a certain response to it,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you can and like a lot of things that are happening are a response to some actions that were there before.
Right.
So
Some sort
it's
of
like the cycle. It's like the the change is constant.
butterfly
That's the
effect,
idea of
phase
karma.
three vibe
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly. In that sense,
Mm-hmm.
that there is the only way things are moving is because of this force of karma. Let's
Right. Right. Interesting. And what about
say.
reincarnation? What does he say about reincarnation?
Yeah. So definitely there is reincarnation, and that the um, growth of the soul is over lives. It's not through one life.
Right.
And in fact that you can actually there is a certain choice in the life that you kind of gather experiences within that life, and it's through the multiple lives that you're kind of great becoming more experienced, let's say, in you're gaining experience. I think what
Okay.
in the traditional sense of reincarnation is about removing yourself from the cycle of reincarnation where you
Right.
don't want
You
to
want
be
to
born again.
reach. Right.
Yeah, you want to reach a point where you don't have to be reborn,
Right.
and that is the state of nirvana.
Mm-hmm.
But here it is about consciously living life in the idea of wanting to gain experience. And
Mm-hmm.
each life would have a different set of experiences that it's kind of set out for.
Hmm. Interesting.
A
This is like
bit of
not much of an
heavy
end.
things for your late night.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying. I'm trying to focus. It's only
Yeah.
12:30. This is good. This is gonna be. I'm gonna have some great dreams. Okay,
Nice.
so we will wrap it up in a moment. I just touching on reincarnation a little bit more. So is like there's no end goal really? Is the end goal just to
There is.
con-
There is.
there is
There
okay.
is. The end goal is to kind of perfect yourself so much that you can also kind of have an influence in the way that you
Uh
interact with the world. And that kind of has an effect as well. So it's about perfection. And the definition of perfection is up to you. But of course, there is a subjective understanding of perfection, but there's still a certain amount of individual subjectivity within it. But it's about kind of doing it within yourself and kind of doing it within the world, like through life and not away from life.
right.
So the idea is to kind of constantly improve yourself in the way that you're kind of living life
Right.
and like just from um, what your kind of desires are, what your wants are, to understanding
Mm-hmm.
emotions, whether the emotions are yourself or are they something separate, and are you in control of those emotions? Do
Okay.
you have ability to kind of move yourself away from it and not be affected by those emotions?
Right.
And in a similar way to your thoughts, right? Do you
Yep.
kind of are you subject to their thoughts, or do you have a direct control over what you're thinking or what you're doing or how you're kind of interfacing with people, interacting with people? So there is always a certain upward trajectory that you can follow, and it is a bit of a never-ending goal because perfection is never-ending in that sense. But there is at least a direction. There is a vector. There's an angle. There's all of those
Ooh, you brought
things.
it back around. I like
You-
it. Okay, so just to wrap it up, and we have to have like we have to meet again in I have a rule with the guests. After a season, after a year, we can bring guests back. So definitely gonna bring you back
Oh,
and
no.
get deeper into this. I want a whole tutorial. Um, for like just in a practical sense, what has this system, what has this ashram given you and shown you as a creative person or as a person who is expressing yourself creatively, expressing yourself
Right.
through the things that we're here talking about.
Okay. Um, there is one instance which is kind of it's interesting. It was actually part of this performance itself that I was kind of the one I showed you earlier. Um, so the music and the sound design and everything was kind of already made before, and I was kind of we had conversations about what the narrative is, what the concept is, and we knew where we are going. And Risenjay had an idea as to where this would be, what the theme of that particular piece would be. Let's say, like for the learning section, the one with the images. He knew that he had a particular idea, and that's what he kind of was um, intuitively trying to bring into the music and into the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but I didn't completely resonate with that. I couldn't really feel that and respond to that. So I was hitting multiple walls as to just say that, okay, just hitting walls after wall after, I don't know what to create for this. And I think it was after a certain process which I had to like, this was a very mental process of like, okay, can I put this together? Could put this together. It was a lot more, it was a bit more like very external and just pulling things together. There wasn't really anything deep within that experience for me to put something down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think after like 3, 4 tries, I was like, okay, I need to find a different way of approaching this. It's not about just listening to the sound and kind of creating something. It's about kind of going within a little bit, understanding it, making it a little more solid for myself, and kind of, almost going through a meditative process, but not in the traditional way of, closing your eyes in this, but like really concentrating on the subject matter, really focusing into it, and that kind of reveals a certain a narrative or a story, and that's what actually came out. And I think that's the one thing that most people resonated most with in that sense, from
Nice.
all the different pieces. So it was very reassuring to know that the traditional, let's say, when I say traditional, it's more my traditional way of doing audiovisual stuff, can be enhanced by kind of taking a step back and kind of diving into it a little more internally, and then bringing that back out instead of just working with external elements. So there is a certain expression from an internal, but that has to be solid. That has to be first formalized and kind of created. That needs a certain amount of process in itself to be able to be expressed.
Wow.
Does that make sense, or is it a little?
No, totally does. I think that that's like also a really interesting way that you look at these things and, kind of answer my question of like, how does this affect your life and how
Right.
does it
Yeah.
shape your life? So yeah, I think that's it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think the outputs are a reflection of what's kind of happening inside, and you need to really solidify and kind of really ground yourself within,
In
so that
general,
the
you're saying in
outputs
general.
really, in general, and this is kind of finding processes to make that happen.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, like yeah, like creative expression is about finding, well, creative expression could be about finding what it is that's going on inside of you and
true.
externalizing it in some sort of fashion or some sort of way.
Yeah,
But I always find that it's like it's almost like you don't have a choice. Like you like human beings are inherently needing to express themselves. You can express yourself
right.
by throwing a rock or by hitting somebody. You can express yourself by, I don't know, providing for the community. But everything is going to be like some sort of like expression. And if you like really
Yeah,
cut it down, like everything's creative, right? Like every choice you make or everything is like it's like there's something, you're creating something. So I don't know. I always kind of like look at it like it's like inherent in human nature to want to express yourself creatively, and because of society, culture, religion, whatever you want to
yeah,
call it, there's like these blockages of like, don't do this,
yeah,
don't do that. You should only do this. You should only do that. But really, everybody's kind of like the same in that sense that we all have this need to express ourselves. You know.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think it's also about what are you expressing and who are you, I mean, who the person is to be expressing it has to be
Right.
formed in that sense. And
Has to be
that
formed.
formation is life.
Mm,
It has to be formed in sense that who you are is being defined by life experiences, and
mm,
how you kind of, what the perspective of those experiences is what is being expressed.
mm. Wow. Yes. Totally. Totally. Well, um, Vinay, this was great. It was lovely talking to you. I wish it wasn't so late because I could definitely continue talking with you, but we'll have to do this again. And yeah, I just really enjoyed talking to you. You're a fascinating guy and really inspiring. Is there anything you want to share with us before we go?
No, thanks for having me on board. I was kind of intimidated by all the different people that you've had before, like the greats of the greatest. So I was like a little concerned whether it really kind of, as I mentioned to you before, that what I'm doing, whether it makes sense for the whole podcast thing or not. But I kind of was super comfortable through this. So thank you for that. And really, yeah, looking forward to seeing what all is going. I mean, like, the podcast been really helpful for me as well to kind of understand how others are looking at things and how their processes are. So happy to be
Excellent.
here. Thank you for bringing this together.
Thank you. Wow, what an episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Mana Smash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Sophie Holder for the amazing internship helping us with all the episodes. And thank you to the guests for coming on and spending time with us. See you next week.